Welcome and good evening to the Shelburne Selectboard meeting of Tuesday, January 14th, 2020, which I now call to order. The first item is to approve the agenda. There are, by my recommendation, several changes. In the case of, we are adding an item regarding the tree committee. And we will, as the meeting progresses, be tabling item 3, the meeting minutes of January 7th, which are not prepared. Is there any other discussion?
And tabling the penalty request.
And we're also, Lee reminds me, we're going to table number 8, which is a consideration of a request to waive late payment of taxes.
Move to approve the January 14, 2020 agenda as amended.
Jamie approves as amended.
I'll second, but can I ask why we decided to table number 8?
We have no reliable telephone and they're
We'd be juggling
out of
2
town.
cell phones.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I'll second that.
Mike seconds. Mary, any comment? Hearing none, those approving, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The next item is noted. We will table. The following item are public comments, which we, as usual, invite. Are there any? Hearing none, seeing no hands. The item following that are select board comments. Mike?
I do have some bad news. UConn lost to Baylor. It was very depressing.
Decisively.
Decisively. I was there. But women. UConn women. No, I have no comments. Thank you.
I would comment on LSU, but they're an SEC team. So one could hardly argue with Alabama having not been in the game. And other important matters before Jamie and Mary comment. First, I'd like to recall, for those of you who weren't there, express a little of my regret that you weren't, because Rick Bissett's presentation the other night last week on his career as poet laureate extended way back through his life in Shelburne. It was really interesting and fun to hear, and not least his account of having once flown in an open cockpit plane over Mount Philo, and despite having nearly dropped out, I guess scared the bejesus out of everybody who was down in the park. He was there with a number of writings in various publication forms. He has a masterful, enviable relationship with young people, as many of you know. A number of whom were there and read their poems. It was as Mike knows as well, he was there. It was a really moving evening, and we are of a mind yet that that's by no means the last we will hear of Rick as poet laureate. Any other further comments? I have one for just ourselves, which is we're anticipating in the following meeting next week the evaluation. We're pretty well settled on the goals. I've communicated with Lee that this is basically where we're coming from. He and I'll sit and put together the version that we two are agreed to, and then we'll follow with that in the evaluation, which then will, in possibly some ways, adjust or change or influence those goals, objectives. And those will be, we will highlight those at a following meeting, so all of you know what our expectations are for his 2020 year.
Good.
Jamie?
No comments from me.
No comments? Any discussion? Again, the next item is Mary?
Yeah, I do have a comment, and I'm sorry, and thank you for allowing me to call in. I hate to tell you this, but I'm wearing shorts and a t-shirt. But the comment I wanted to make, and I hope it's not premature, is I just want the public to know how hard everybody has worked on the budget, most especially Lee and Peter, of course, but also everybody's been working on that topic, and I'm sure we'll get into the weeds a little bit in a few minutes, but I feel like it really does merit some mention because it's a hard task and everybody's really been applying themselves, and I certainly really appreciate all that hard effort.
Well, that's very generous, Mary. Mike's been a major contributor as well, being new to it, which is especially demanding. Lee is in his second year of it. I'm sure he's yet to feel totally comfortable, but
It's a team effort.
yeah.
It is a team effort.
Yeah, so, and as always, where would we be without Peter is a question for which I have no answer and would hope never to have to answer, put it that way, yeah. So we thank you. Thank you, Mary. Any other discussion, comments? The next item is the town manager report.
Thanks. 3 quick items. Again, as Mary noted, there's been a lot of hard work continuing to be done in the budget, and I hope we'll come to a landing on that soon and to everyone's benefit. Just wanted to mention that Shelburne Winter Carnival is on Saturday, January 25. It's at the Shelburne Fieldhouse this year, and that will be, I believe, from 10 to 1 in the morning and afternoon with a variety of activities for families and friends. So hope we can all be there for part of that. And just wanted to remind folks, I'm sure everyone who lives in town is well aware, but the deer are out and moving again. There was a motor vehicle accident this evening on Bostwick Road. The deer crossed the road there in the dark, and just be careful as you're out there on the roads, please.
Is anybody injured? Was there any injury?
I believe there were minor injuries. I didn't make that call because I was preparing for the meeting.
Thank you, Lee. Any questions, discussion? Hearing none, the next item is to consider CBC appointments. That's committees, boards, and commissions. We have a number. Is everyone here who's applied?
I believe some are likely here. Everyone was informed about it. I haven't met some of these folks in person, so.
Okay,
I
want to start
wouldn't
with Allison and Bob. Are you both here for the DRB?
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you both. So we have 2 seats open on the Development Review Board. One is a full member and the other is an alternate. And we have 2 applicants for those seats.
Are they each applying for the full seat?
Mr. Plant would
Okay.
prefer the full seat. I
Okay.
believe you've suggested you might be willing to consider the alternate seat if that works for you. So.
That unties a Gordian knot
It
for
does.
us. That's
Yes,
very
it
nice.
does.
You know,
Thank you very much.
we appreciate
we're
that. We'll
fortunate
remember
to
that
have
for a
him
long
to-
time. Yeah, thank you.
Both do come recommended by the current chair of the DRB, and both would be for full 3-year terms starting and continuing through a 3-year cycle.
Thank you, Lee. It's our habit to ask you to stand and introduce yourselves and just say a few words about what your interest is. And if you wouldn't mind doing that, Allison, would you?
I'm Allison Myers. I live on Summit Circle, and I feel like I've lived in Shelburne really for the last 25 years, but I did take a brief couple of year period to move to the other county, Addison County in North Ferrisburg, and found myself back in Shelburne. I have a son who's in the 5th grade at the community school. I work for Lake Champlain Chocolates as the director of sales and marketing by day. So service and giving back to the community is a big part of my DNA and what I love to do. And as I mentioned in the letter, I've kind of been retired from any official board duties maybe for a year or 2 and had been looking for what would be next. And I thought the Development Review Board would be an interesting way to get back to town, a great way to learn a little bit more about the town, and I welcome the opportunity. I don't suspect I'll have many conflicts of interest with my background, so that should be a good thing. I'm a reliable, dedicated committee member who often goes in head first and overcommits myself. So
Perfect.
I shouldn't have any issues with the reliability. Self-management of that will be on me. What else can I tell you?
So,
Wait, Mike?
so I'm sorry, but It says historic preservation and design
There
review.
was some confusion about the language of
Okay.
the difference between the DRB being development review and design review. So it is the development review board
Okay.
that I am interested in.
I mean,
serving
I'm
on.
cautious about warning you about what you're getting into. I might just say, go ahead, do whatever, but just so you know.
I believe my eyes are open to,
Okay, good.
which
Okay.
board I'm getting
We've
involved
had
in.
that conversation.
Okay, great, yeah.
Well, you have a considerable background in not only in professional terms and you certainly have been quite a success in that, but also in service, public and private, which is greatly valued. And you would know Shelburne well, so we're just delighted that you've got an interest. Do you have any questions of us?
I don't think so. I spoke with Jamie a little bit on Saturday, and
We did. We spoke a little bit. I shared just the quasi-judicial nature of the board versus, say, a planning commission. Oh my gosh. Sorry, Colleen. How are you? Welcome. I always ask applicants a couple questions. So the first one is just encouraging you to become familiar with the ethics ordinance
okay.
in town if you haven't done so yet. And with this board in particular, obviously the, zoning bylaws are
Right.
the most important piece of this. So that's not something you do in one evening.
Right.
So the sooner you get started, the better on just becoming familiar with it. It's not something you need to memorize, and our staff is tremendous here. Dean's in the room, and they do an amazing job preparing the application. So you'll be well informed.
Great.
And we've had a very positive recommendation from both Mark and Bill Hilton on the board. So we welcome you. If there's no other question, you want to move?
Sure.
Appointment as an alternate?
Move to appoint Allison Myers to the DRB as an alternate member, beginning this evening and ending April 1, 2023.
Yes.
I'll second that.
Moved by Jamie, seconded by Mike. Any discussion? Hearing none. Those approving, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. Thank you, Mary. In which case, we welcome you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thanks, Allison.
And thank you for your interest. Now, the next applicant is Robert Plant. Can we call you Bob? Is that usual?
Sure. Good evening, Robert Plant. I live over 25 Deer Run with my wife. I've got a couple of kids in the local school system. They're 9 and 11, so they're right in the mix of it. Really, my interest in this is I'm at a point in my life where I'm ready to be able to give back to my community on a private nature. My professional life is I'm a deputy fire chief in the city of Burlington, and I've been up there for quite a long time. I've been in the fire service for 30 years. And so I have a background in municipal government. We're tied in a lot of different ways as the fire service there. And so I was trying to look for a way to give back to the community of Shelburne, and this was it. Having my background in the fire service, I have a lot of design review and some potential there to work as a team member on the DRB. So that was really my motivation to do it. The timing is right in my life that I can give back to the community in a more full and fulfilling way. I do some coaching at the baseball and at the youth football level here in Shelburne, where both my kids play. So that's really about me and my interest in that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You got questions for us?
I don't have many questions, no. I have familiarized myself some with the ethics and the bylaws already, just because I keep an eye on local government, just as I do in the city of Burlington. It's easy to follow here in Shelburne as well. So I keep an eye on that kind of stuff.
Mike, any comment?
No, you sound very well qualified. It looks great. Be very happy to have you in town. Working on a board would be great.
I appreciate it.
Mary?
No, I'm all set. Thank you very much.
Colleen?
Thank you so much. We just appreciate every single person who steps up to the plate and volunteers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. No.
I think your reference to teamwork is really important on all of our committees, boards, and commissions, not least ourselves. That's really, that's really sets the stage for, I think, enduring decision-making. And we all work very hard on on a collegial background, a collegial conduct of meetings and decisions and questions. So I'm really pleased that you chose to mention that and think well of that. Any other comments on your part?
No, I just think that the community itself is pretty tight knit, and I think we're all happy when our neighbors can be successful in any of their ventures, and being able to help people navigate this whole DRB process is important. And the smoother we can make it, the better.
Thanks. There's another good mention, community outreach. So we're very pleased to have you. Is there a motion?
I'm happy to make it.
I will move to appoint Robert Plant to a 3-year term to the Design Development Review Board, beginning tonight, ending April 1st, 2023.
Mike moves.
Second.
Jamie seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those approving, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Mary?
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. Thank you very much. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Would you like to introduce the next?
Susan Dunning has applied for a seat on the tree committee, and she comes enthusiastically endorsed by the chair of that committee, Gail Henderson King, who is here with us also.
So I'm Susan Dunning. I've lived in Shelburne since 2002 with my husband. I have 3 kids. 2 are at UVM and 1 is still at CVU. I'm a physician and been working at UVM at the medical center for the last 18 years now, and recently retired from there and am now working at the VA in Burlington as a physician. So with the retirement from UVM, I have a lot more time, which I'm quite excited about, and just looking for new endeavors and doing different things. And I've always been community-oriented and, again, want to give back to the community as well. And I've always loved trees. I don't have any experience, per se, in agriculture or that, but I've taken a couple of classes over at the UVM, or rather CVU Access, about trees, and then I came to a couple of the committee meetings here with the tree committee and did a couple of inventories with the ash borer problem. So just interested in doing something different, and I'd probably provide a bit of a lay person's view on the committee as opposed to an expert view.
Thank you, Doctor. Gail, you want to add anything?
She's a great candidate. She's already been to our meetings. She's already been out helping us in the field, and we need members. And she's a good friend. How's all that?
Thank you, Gail.
Can I ask
Sign her up.
just a clarifying question? I thought we discussed changing the committee to not advisory, just the tree committee.
We need to
Should
change the application
We did
form, but
change
we
it.
did change
We
it.
did change it though, right?
Thank you.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
It is in
Good call
fact the
out.
tree committee.
Okay, it's no longer advisory. I mean, advisory.
Thank you. Yes.
You want to?
Yeah.
Sure.
I'll-
Do it.
I move to appoint Susan Dunning to a position on the Tree Advisory Committee for a 3-year term, starting tonight and ending
April 1, 2023.
April 1, 2023.
Moved by Colleen,
Second.
seconded by Jamie. Any discussion other than the fact that we greatly encourage, in fact, and expect that you'll familiarize yourself with the ethics ordinance?
Yes.
Is there any other discussion? Those approving, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay.
Aye.
Thank you, Mary. The ayes have
Thank you
it.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you and welcome.
And last but not least, we have Elaine Lamonic, who seeks a seat on the Social Services Committee. And again, she comes enthusiastically endorsed by Georgine Grover, the chair. And this appears to be a 1-year term. I'm not sure why it's different, but that's what it says in our town report, so.
Good evening.
Good evening. So my name's Elaine Lamanic, and I have lived in Shelburne pretty much my entire life, so 30 years. And so growing up in Shelburne, I attended both SCS and CBU. I currently work at Jess Boutique downtown in Burlington, as well as the Shelburne Athletic Club. But I previously worked extensively at Shelburne Community School, actually with Georgine, as a one-on-one para for special needs children. So I have a great passion for helping others, and having had very strong ties and hands-on experience with the community as a whole, just in general by working at the school, and having grown up here, I just have a passion for wanting to help make Shelburne a wonderful town, keep it a wonderful town, and you know, bring it into a great future. I don't know if there's anything else to say.
That sounds great.
Any questions from any of us?
Just out of curiosity, are you related to Jim Lemanek?
I am, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, are you, sorry. Oh, never mind.
That was my question. Are you related?
Oh, yes, I am. He's my father, yeah.
Okay, well, he's one of my absolute favorite attendings in my entire residency. Yeah, Dr. Lemanek is one of these men who, he's intelligent, compassionate, an incredible professor, and learned a ton from him that I use almost every day.
Oh, that's
including
so
today.
Cool. Oh,
Yeah.
he's a great dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as a mother to a child who has special needs, really appreciate all the work that you put forth there.
Thank you.
Mike, any questions?
No, this sounds great.
Mary?
No, thank you very much.
Jamie?
No.
I think we're batting 1,000
We are.
tonight.
Okay.
Yes, yes. Any questions do you have of us?
I don't, no, thank you.
Well, we greatly appreciate
I'll make this
your
easy.
willingness to serve. It's a pretty critical function, and especially the knowledge of the community. I mean, intimate knowledge of the community is really what makes that effort succeed, and we're really very, very happy that you're going to join us. So we thank you. Is there a motion?
Move to appoint Elaine Lemanek to a one-year term on the Social Services Committee, beginning tonight and ending April 1, 2021.
Colleen moves.
Second.
Jamie seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Those approving, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Mary? Mary as well. And those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you all.
The next item is to consider a waiver of penalty for late payment of property taxes.
we
We've
skipped that
tabled that, as those of you who were here earlier may know, to next week, and that's due entirely to the fact that we have a telecommunications glitch and can't have a phone conversation with the applicants who are out of town and Mary at the same time. The next item is a public hearing on the CDBG application for site analysis of potential expansion of the Shelburnewood Mobile Home Co-op. This is an application for a grant. Is there
So, yes, you heard a preliminary presentation about this. Shelburnewood Mobile Home Co-op would like to apply for a community development block grant in order to get the funds to do a site analysis for a potential expansion of that housing co-op. It requires a formal public hearing in order for the town to consider endorsing it. It does require a small local match, which would be provided through in-kind time by Planner Dean Pierce. But we would need to open the hearing, hear whatever we need to hear, close the hearing, and then decide on that.
So the action would be, we'd ultimately authorize.
Or endorse,
application.
endorse the application
Okay.
to the granting agency.
Okay.
because because we're exceeding to the
Right, because essentially.
provision of in-kind.
Right, and these grants tend to be pass-through grants, so technically, in a sense, the town's the applicant, but it's really going to another nonprofit entity. So
Would you let us and our audience know your name, and would you like to speak to it?
Could we get a motion to open the?
Yes, we do need to formally open the hearing.
Sorry,
Yeah.
before you do that, we have to formally open the hearing. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Jamie moves.
Second.
Mike seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none. Those approving, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. Thank you, Mary. So we're now legal.
Hi, I'm Julia Curry with Cooperative Development Institute, and I provide training and advice and support for the Shelburnewood Mobile Home Cooperative. So I'm here in that capacity, having done the work to help the cooperative request this grant. And James Stannis is here as the president of the board of the cooperative. So would it help to just give a brief overview of the
I think
proposal?
just a quick summary of the intent of the activities that, a brief description of the activities that you want the grant monies to pay for.
Great. So this is it's federal funding that is then administered by the state, and it does flow through towns. So towns are applying for the grant, but very often it is on behalf of a subgrantee. So that's the case here, that the town would apply on behalf of the cooperative. And the purpose is for the cooperative to explore whether it's feasible to develop land that it owns, open land that it owns, that is available for development. So it's really to assess what the cost would likely be, and what the options would be for the cooperative to finance that development, to add lots, basically to expand the park, so that people could bring in more, could bring in the new mobile homes. So it's about 7 acres. That's basically east of the current park. And it's kind of a two-parter. Some of it is really just the engineering, what would be involved in laying out lots and bringing in the infrastructure. But a lot of it is also, it's unusual for a cooperative park to develop real estate, right? It's an expensive undertaking with some risk. So a lot of the work would actually be to look at what the risks would be, whether there might be any type of nonprofit developer or any developer that could partner with the park for this enterprise. And the benefit, to the town and to the region is really to bring in more workforce housing, excuse me, the most affordable type of home ownership that anyone can have in Vermont. So that would the benefit to the park is to grow, right? Is to have more members, to spread their expenses, and also have a kind of a deeper talent pool, because it is a cooperative. It's cooperatively run, so the members are, making the decisions for the business and doing the work for the business. So there's a strong benefit to just having more folks there.
Thank you. You want to make a quick comment, you or Tracy?
I mean, really just to
Let us know,
let the
audience know who you are.
I'm sorry, Jamie Stanis, I'm the president of the cooperative. Really what we're looking at is we have this undeveloped land. It is enough space to maybe put an additional 28, 29 home sites in. And really, we're just looking at whether it is a cost-effective thing to do with the land, rather than just leave it untouched. I do feel there is strength in numbers for a cooperative, simply because, the more people you can spread the cost out, the more you can control the cost of living. And that's really the goal.
Thanks, James.
Sure.
We might note quickly that this grant requires a town put, but it can be in the form of in-kind, that is technical and assistance, which Dean Pierce, our Director of Planning and Zoning, has generously offered to provide. So there's not going to be a dollar contribution from the town. And we note as well that this the initiative here addresses directly several of the major goals in our recently adopted town plan. Is there any question on anybody's part? Colleen?
Dean, I think I saw you. Hi. Do you have an approximation of how much time you think this will take for you?
believe I'm in the budget for 19 hours. Is that right?
Okay,
And that's a guess, but that's our best guess.
got it. Okay.
Thank
Can
you,
I ask
Dean.
while Dean is up? What's the process then? This is just sort of a scoping study, basically, right?
Yeah, this is a planning grant. These types of projects that are the subject of planning grants may ultimately lead to another implementation grant application. I don't know about that. That's up to them, but it would give them some understanding of the feasibility. I will say, like Jerry pointed out, this is a type of initiative that's supported by the comprehensive plan. But the idea of something like this happening in that location has been the subject of studies in Shelburne going back probably close to 10 years now. There was a study that was sponsored by the town that looked at several different scenarios. So it's been an area of interest to the town for quite a while.
Great.
Thank you, Dean. Any other questions? Any questions? Well, I think this is a really good thing that you're going to do. So, and we wish it all the success. Is there a motion to?
Close the
What is your
hearing.
recommendation?
Be a motion to close the hearing and then a motion to take whatever action you deem fit.
All right. First, we'll close the hearing. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Mike moves. Colleen seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none. Those approving, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you, Mary. And those opposed, nay. The hearing's closed.
And then a motion
To
to
support.
take action to support or endorse the grant if that's your wish.
Is there such a motion?
I'll move.
Mike moves.
Or
think
Mike will
Colleen
move, and I will second.
Colleen moves. And Mike seconds.
Or that.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. Those approving, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed, Mary?
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Yes, good luck.
The next item, for which we are blessed with a number of you, is the public hearing on the 2020-2021 budget. Part of that budget presentation tonight, which is a public hearing, and in a minute we'll formally start that, is the school budget. And Dave Connery will be, if it's okay with you, we will ask first in the public hearing to make his presentation. Should that be outside the public hearing?
Well, no, just wondering if perhaps we might take up the tree committee grant, because that'll be a very brief item. And I'm not sure if those members were planning to stay for the whole budget discussion.
This is the test.
This was our added.
Just a question.
Because you have a nice budget this year, and it's way back in the end, too. Way back there, 9:30, maybe 9:45. We couldn't do that. You already are dealing with Emerald Ash, we couldn't do that, so.
Yeah, I think they
So with
put
the,
it at the end because no one's here.
with the consent
I
of
don't
my
have any problem with that.
colleagues,
That's fine.
I'll
Let's do it.
take up.
So just to be clear, did we add this to the agenda?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I agree. Okay, good. Just making sure.
We'll take up that matter. Would you like to introduce it?
Thanks. So this is a proposed grant application to the State of Vermont Urban and Community Forestry Program. The total value of the grant is roughly $5,500. The grant request to the state is for $2,500. It would require a $1,000 cash match, which is proposed in the tree committee's budget for next year, and the rest of the local match would be provided by in-kind services. And this would be a project to continue working to reinvigorate the health of the trees on the parade ground, which, as you know, sees a lot of foot traffic, a lot of use during farmers market, and the tree committee's goal is to help make sure those trees stay alive and stay healthy for the next generation.
Thank you, Lee. Do you, Gail or David, want to speak to it?
Thank you for letting us jump forward, and thank you for putting this on last minute. We
Let
just,
everybody know with you.
Gail Henderson King, I'm on the tree committee. This is a grant application, the Caring for Communities grant application that we've applied for at least 5 years now in a row, and we've always been very successful in doing this. We had a grant 2 years ago for doing root invigoration of several trees on the parade ground, and wanted to be able to continue this work, but it is costly. So the purpose of this grant is to be able to continue that work and additional 9 trees on the parade ground, hopefully, and be able to help them with the survival with all the various activities that occur on the parade ground.
Thank you, Gail. Any questions?
So it's a 50, sorry.
Oh, no,
No,
you're
no.
probably going to ask that.
It's a $5,500 total grant?
Yes,
With
it has to be a
$1,000
50% match, so we're asking for $2,500 grant request, and as Lee said, $1,000 cash would be out of our budget next year, and the rest it would be in-kind services. And when we did this grant application and was successful 2 years ago, we have volunteers help with spreading mulch on the trees after the root invigoration work is done, as well as we're getting the mulch donated to us. We had the Boy Scouts help when we did this several years ago. We hope to be able to do that again, as well as other volunteers within the committee, as well within the community, as well as our committee. So we've got a bunch of different activities that we use for volunteer for that in-kind match.
This will cover all trees on the,
No, it's only going to cover 9. So we're planning, we did 6 before, and so the goal, and those were all on the north side of the green. So the goal here is to do the ones facing Shelburne Road, that a couple of them are really suffering right now, as well as doing them on the Falls Road side. So that's kind of our goal, is trying to take care of the areas where they're getting a lot of impact right now. So
I support this, I think it's a great idea, but I'm curious about, when you make this initial investment, are you sort of de facto committing yourself to something similar every year? Or how long does such a treatment actually last?
Sure.
Dave Hall, Tree Committee, Tree Warden. Unlike your lawn, where you're going in and you're aerating it on a regular basis if you're seeing traffic, or your sports fields, this process, you do the aeration, and then you add in fertilizer, compost, and a product called biochar. And biochar is basically charcoal, and that encourages microbe growth, and that charcoal really never breaks down. So that being in the soil around there should be there. They found biochar going back to prehistoric days in the fossils with the dinosaurs. So the idea is it's a costly one-time process, and then you can move on. So what we did, the ones we felt we could have we're having the most traffic the last round, and we're doing the ones that we feel are having the next most traffic around them now, and hopefully there may be a few left.
Yeah.
But we should not have to readdress this issue in this manner again.
Great.
On these trees.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
The goal is, the way trees grow is, everybody thinks that the roots go straight down, and they don't. They're all within the first 12 inches of the soil, and they spread out at least to the width of the crown of the tree. And when those roots and that soil gets compacted, it inhibits their growth. And what's going on in City Hall Park in Burlington right now is a direct result of those trees being the soil being compacted so much by the trees that they suffered greatly. So the goal is to be able to aerate the soil around these trees, hopefully be able to prevent, heavy compaction happening in the future, with the goal of helping these trees to survive for everybody's enjoyment for years to come with all the various activities.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gail, just for being involved and taking this on, and the rest of your committee, and just thinking ahead for the future. So in 20, 25 years, we're still enjoying this. I mean, that's pretty remarkable. to have that kind of forethought. So just thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. It's all our committee, but we're all committed to loving trees and making these
city.
trees survive.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, questions, Lee? Any?
No, if you're inclined, a motion to authorize the application would be.
I'll move to authorize the application.
Mike moves. Mary, would you like to second?
Sure.
Mary seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those approving, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed, thank you, Mary. And those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Thank you. Thank you, David.
Thank you very much.
you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Now we're ready for 9. Is there a motion to enter a public hearing on the town manager's fiscal 2020-21 draft budget proposal?
So moved.
Colleen moves.
Second.
Jamie seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none. Those approving, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Mary? Thank you.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. And again, I'm going to suggest that we do 2 things. One, that we ask Dave. And I see Barbara's there, and she may want to join us first. And I'm anticipating you will entertain questions, of course. And following that, we will keep in mind that this public hearing is really in your specific interest. And I think what we'll do, and we'll remind us all at the time, is first take questions from you. If these get too elaborate or too involved, or begin to discuss aspects of the budget at greater length than maybe they deserve at the start, we may say, let's wait until we step through it, which will be a following process. For all of you to know, the final budget approval is scheduled for next Tuesday night. So this is a continuing process, and one possible outcome tonight would be to continue the hearing. Meanwhile, I'd like to, for those of you, for the one person in Shelburne world who may not know Dave, he's here, but I do want to make one comment, that he is finishing 8 years of service to Shelburne.
Wow.
With school board now, and prior to that, school committee, each of which he has chaired. That's a pretty astounding service to a community, and we can't thank you enough for it.
Well, thank you for that. It's been my pleasure to do this. I think it's 9 and not 8.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. It's just because
So double the admiration.
Yeah. In my first write-in campaign, my kindergarten daughter was putting sunflower Post-its on the little flyers that I was bringing around the neighborhood, and she is now in 9th grade at the wonderful school of CVU. But the final slide is up now. We can't go right to the last slide here. Well, I guess we'll... Don't read quickly, okay? All right. And then you had that under view, right, for presentation? There we go. All right, so as I was introduced, my name is Dave Connery. I'm the vice chair of the Champlain Valley School District School Board. And what I'm going to present today is the full Champlain Valley School District budget. We're going to go through enrollment, our goals, the proposed budget numbers, talk about budget factors. We're going to talk about tax calculations, tax rate implications, and property tax relief. We do not have the official articles right now because we're going to approve those on the 21st, next Tuesday. And so I will give them to you verbally, and I apologize for that, but that's the spirit of cooperation that we have with the town, where we present our budget before it's officially approved. So many of you were probably familiar with the Shelburne Community School. It was his own school district for a long time, and then we paid into paying for the CVU high school. It's been 3 years. And so now we have this one total combined school district, which includes all the schools of Williston, Heinsberg, Charlotte, and our wonderful school of Shelburne, and as well as CVU. And this is I like to put these numbers up because I always get a hard time in previous town meetings for budget proposals when they would put up my absolute numbers for my budget. And then I would ask the former chair how many people the town employs versus the numbers that we had up. So we do employ a fair number of teachers. We have 415 teachers. We have 3,809 actual students. And I believe, is the 415 instructional or is that total staff? It's just licensed teachers. Okay, I thought it was low. Yeah. There's lots of conversations about how kids are taught today. They do still learn math. They do still learn to conjugate verbs. But there's also a wider task that they're asked to do when they leave school and go into the world. And we have these this mission statement in the school district that really sort of ties up not just the skills that they need to master in order to add and write and calculate, but really just to tie everything together to become good citizens, to learn to contribute to their community, to live responsibly, think creatively, and learn actively and collaboratively. And it's a different learning environment, but I can see watching my daughter go into CVU as a 9th grader, it may be different, but it's still awesome. Kids are learning a lot. Everyone in the school district would like to thank all of our community members, teachers and support staff. There's lots of community members that come into the school and help out. I've seen I don't know if it's on Front Porch Forum or it's just on Scott Sebo's Monday morning emails that he sends that they're looking for lunch monitors at the school. So if anybody wants to help out another way, there's so many ways you can be involved in the school. I had nothing to do with putting my son on this page. So points of pride, this is a really busy slide, but really there's so many different things that happen in this school. We have grants that come from the PTO, where in this case, encouraging kids to write plays. We have a very active diversity and inclusion committee that meets on a regular basis and has active discussions. We have, apparently the music teacher submitted way more bullets this year than anyone else, so we have lots of news about folks going to district and statewide music festivals. The Scripps Spelling Bee, 33 kids going to the Spelling Bee. I remember there was a time when we sat in budget meetings trying to figure out where we were going to find the stipend for the Spelling Bee. That's how tight things were at some times. The cross-country one I saved for last because that was pretty amazing. It was up at Hardack, and my son was running. But the girls' team did win the state championship, and it was that day in October when it was 40 degrees and raining sideways, and they were running through grass and mud, and it was one of those days where you just gave up wearing impermeable layers because you were just going to get wet and you were going to get cold. And the kids did a great job. It was great to see them work hard. CVU, Outstanding Teacher of the Year for our Latin teacher at CVU, Leanne Martin. Lots of school success. I think the only varsity Division I sport they did not win the state championship for was field hockey. And I believe, I thought about this today, they won on goals scored. However, they also won on goals disallowed. So technically, they won on goals scored. Great work with Special Olympics bowling. There's a lot of great Special Olympics stories that come out of collaborative work between the students and Special Olympics at the school. We had a student serve on the State Board of Education, which I don't know if I'd want to do that, or the Development Review Board. Be a toss-up. So, and then the Spectrum Youth and Family Sleep Out. Kids slept outside in the fall at CVU grounds. It's a great fundraiser for kids' homelessness. It's a great fundraiser. Been around for a long time. And, you know, the cross-country teams are down at the bottom because all they do is win, win, and win again. I think they've won the state championship in the teens now, the number of times they've repeated, so especially for the girls. So we move into the budget. As we went into the budget season, teacher salary is once again in negotiations. Benefits are up 13.2%, and that's mostly driven by health insurance. We'll see those numbers later. Utilities and fuel are just general economic indicators in the U.S. that we tick those over. Tech centers, we're assuming the cost of those to go up 5%. Workman's comp increases, and plus we're having trouble attracting substitutes, and so we're increasing the rates that we're paying subs. One of the things that shows the efficiency of our system is when you look at class size. I know there's a lot of debate about big class size, little class size, but we do have guidelines which you can see on the right side where for kindergarten through 8th grade, we want them being 20 for the youngest kids, and then from 4th to 8th being around 25. And you can see for K to 3 and kindergarten, we're pushing right up to those numbers. So we're maximizing the number of kids we can educate for our fixed costs. We're a little bit lower on the 4 to 8 classes. There's a lot of volatility in predicting kindergarten class sizes, so it's always something that we try to manage risk of, because there's really no exact way to determine how many kids are going to come into kindergarten. You try really hard, and if you have someone who's going to be a kindergartner next year, please register with Patty Spagnolo. So this was the slide I was thinking of. If you look at all faculty and staff around the district, there's over 800 faculty and staff with 410 classroom teachers, and Shelburne Community School has a similar ratio, 143 faculty and staff to 71 classroom teachers. If we look at enrollment, this is just for Shelburne Community School. There's a lot of big stories that get a lot of attention around the state about declining enrollment. And yes, you can see here that in 2016 it was 760, and in 2020, next year, it's projected to be about 680. That is coming down, but in no way is it coming down to the magnitude as it is outside of Chittenden County. Another thing I'll point out here is with a lot of new development coming into town, people always say, oh my gosh, what are we going to do with all these kids? I would remind people that while it wasn't ideal for the long term, when we were renovating the school, we took the E-wing, closed it, renovated it, and moved all the people from that wing into the rest of the school. So there is a lot of space around the school to maximize efficiency. So based on projections you hear of the amount of units that are coming in, unless everybody had triplets and moved into each place, but there is a lot of capacity at Shelburne Community School for it to grow. Overall, the district has remained pretty steady over the same time frame, from 3850 to about 3809. That number is very in contrast to numbers around the state, to lose only 50 kids over that, or 40 kids over that time frame. Lots of numbers, but basically these are just the distribution of students throughout the different districts. Williston is still the biggest, Shelburne is second, Heinsberg, then Charlotte, and of course everyone feeds into CVU. This is a chance to say, based on these population numbers, this is how we allocated school board members for the district. Williston has 4, Shelburne has 3, Heinsberg and Charlotte both have 2, and then the town of St. George has 1. These are the SBAC results for the 18-19 year, which would be the year previous. You can see SCS is in green, and they go in groups of 2. So the first columns are grade 3, English language arts, and then math, and then you see those go 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th. The numbers do change because the curriculum and the exam changes over years, over each school year. And, you know, SCS is outperforming the Vermont average. Varying, I mean, you'd love to see it outperforming exceptionally and consistently throughout all of them, but there are differences in curriculums that are taught and curriculums that are tested, and that's why some of these numbers change, but they're all indicating success. There's only one indicator similar to that for the SBAC for CVU, and that would be grade 9 English language arts and grade 9 math assessments, both above average, and they're both above the Vermont average, and so still indicating success. With our big budget that we have now, we have a much more rigorous process. I like to recognize Jean Jensen, who's our COO. She's a resident of Heinsberg now, right? You are, okay. Used to be in Williston. I was confused for a second there. You moved to Shelburne, yeah. So she's helped us establish a great process around our budget. It's now a yearly budget process. It's not something that we start in late October and hope to finish in time for the articles to be warned in January. Constantly evaluating results of the prior quarter, getting input from the community in the fall, from community forums, creating board goals, and then assessing class sizes and financials that we need to meet. We've been working, I'd say we've suspended all board business for December and January in general to develop the budget, working through first special education, general instructional, and then operations and maintenance, and then tying everything together with looking at the total budget and areas where we can reduce and provide service. These are the goals that the school board themselves use when we make budget decisions. And it's about supporting that mission that I started with, making sure that we exceed educational quality standards. We don't just meet them. Implementing key initiatives in literacy and others, and continue to improve the budget process, including the focus on community input. I really can't stress enough that it would be great if twice as many people participated in the budget and came to our community forums or wrote in when they saw requests for comment on Front Porch Forum, because we really want to build a budget that includes a cost that the community will support. And so here, we're going to start with the top line number, and then we're going to break out in the later slides. The overall budget this year for the entire district is a little over 82 million. That number represents a change of plus 4.4% over last year. If you take that and you divide it by the number of equalized pupils, the percent change in cost per equalized pupil is plus 3.2%. The equalized pupil count that we use in this calculation is different than the number of students that are in the school, because children of different ages cost more to educate, or cost a different amount to educate. So there's different weightings as the kids move through the grades. So you're going to see a number later that's over 4,000. Some of the personnel changes that we're going to see here in this budget, one is a reduction of 3 full-time teachers for kindergarten in Allenbrook School and Shelburne Community School, and then the reduction of a CVU non-teaching position. And then we're adding early literacy in a couple of schools that lost federal funding to support that. We're adding essential arts and STEM, especially to increase and equalize access to STEM education throughout the district. We're adding behavioral specialists in Heinsberg, and CVU guidance counselors and leadership teams. Many years ago, the administration of CVU was reduced based on a projected decrease in student population. That didn't happen, and so now the administrators are completely tapped out and aren't concentrating on all of their functions. They're constantly fighting, they're more often fighting fires than they are encouraging growth in students than they want to. And so we're trying to add guidance and another leadership member to provide more interaction to students in each of the houses that's separate from discipline. I know right now the only time I see Nick and Robin is when disciplinary hearings happen. We don't get to see them come and do presentations as much as we'd like. So this is an attempt to address that demand. A couple of grants to add SEL student support and middle school SAPs. Social emotional learning, is that SEL? Okay. Yeah, just helping kids better adapt to challenging behaviors and solve problems themselves. And then also adding a bus dispatcher, part-time. For operations, for facilities, no change in staffing, minor increases to operating costs in electricity and fuel. I just mentioned we're adding half of a dispatcher to help with planning of transportation. Food service is tough for us because we provide a service that we can't, that has a lot of cost, but it's not an area where we want to make money. So we're continuing to work to make sure we're offering nutritious meals to kids so that they can get them, and then while trying not to lose too much money while doing it. I think last year we made an investment to admit, like, this is something we're funding. It's not a business that we're trying to balance the balance sheet. And then continued work in technology, which has just completely changed for kids as we know it. Everyone has their own Chromebooks in middle school now, all the way through to high school. And then continued security and internet infrastructure updates throughout the network so that if anything happens, the school can continue to function. The big factors driving the budget increase of 4.4% is salary increases, regular contracted salary increases for all the staff, and then the health insurance, which shouldn't be shocking, but it is shocking. So we're increasing by $4 million. and 1 million of it is just health insurance. You know, I really hope that the governor's initiatives a couple of years ago would help pool education or insurance costs and help reduce that. We're not really seeing that yet. You know, and we'll see what happens. Special ed did increase this year more than others, but we did give them a challenge, and they did take, and you know, this number is significantly lower than initial estimates. So they're providing great work, you know, great work there, serving all of our students. I don't know if any of you know this, but the administrator of special education here in the district is one of the biggest contributors to the committee that's trying to reevaluate how we fund special education. So it's great to have a seat at that table, and also someone who's so knowledgeable, bringing that information back to us, and then having an asset in our district. And that one is Megan Roy. So we do have other instructional adds to the district, where it's early literacy. That was the item on the previous page where we lost some federal funding. We have tuition to the tech centers, increases in educational supplies, other benefits to people outside of health insurance, and then our debt service actually went down this year. So going through the tax calculation, if you look at the total budget expenditures of 82 million, and you subtract out our anticipated revenues mostly from special education, from federal grants, our net education spending is 69 million. You divide that by the equalized pupils, and that's how you come up with the spending per equalized pupil, which you see here at 16,585. The tax commissioner released the statewide yield estimate at the beginning or late in the fall last year, which then we used that number to divide by our equalized pupil spending to come up with our spending adjustment. So you can see how the 16 divided by the 10.8 comes up with 152%, which then that turns into your homestead tax rate of $1.52. Because we merged, we still have a 4-cent tax discount available from Act 46. So prior to CLA, our equalized tax rate is $1.48. The CLA numbers came out just before Christmas, I believe, or just after. Shelburne's CLA is 92.7%, and that's a number that goes into the denominator of your tax rate to see how different your current sale price of homes in the area are relative to assessed value. And I think even at 92.7, I think I saw something in writing that you're probably not going to challenge that. Is that probably right? And did I see that you're possibly starting a reappraisal in 2 years?
It's begun now. It's a 3-year process before it's complete.
Okay.
Ongoing.
It's ongoing. Are you required to do the reappraisal every 15 years? Or did it just happen to come out that way?
Well, the state requires it when those coefficients get a little too far out of whack. So we're being proactive about launching that before we're forced to.
Okay. So once CLA is applied, the school budget for Shelburne will result in a tax change of $77.02 per 100,000 of assessed value. So in that tax letter that the governor gave us, they wanted to hold growth in ed spending at or near 5%, and we've come in below that at 4%. They were concerned that equalized pupil count would go down. Ours is going up. Both of those help. Our growth in spending per equalized pupil statewide, the assumption was about 5.5. Our growth is only 3.2%. I do know that these numbers are all, for tax increases and budget numbers, the numbers are all increasing. They're positive numbers. And I but I really feel like the board worked hard to try and make sure that the money was well spent in all areas, and I think the administration has done a good job of responding to that. We used to call it income sensitivity, but you can qualify for what is now called property tax credit. So your tax bill cannot solely be based on your appraised value, and that's applicable up to $147,500 of income. So if you want some more information, you can go to the Vermont tax site. As of last week, the forms aren't up there yet, but so you can't figure out how that tails off on its way up to 147, but it should be up there soon. And so there was, as I mentioned, the articles that we haven't approved the articles yet, but when you get the articles on voting day, you will see the first article will be for the budget of $82 million. A second article will be for 3 buses. So we're buying 2 full-size buses and then 1 specialty bus that has a wheelchair lift, and that will be a $260,000 article. It gives me great pleasure to announce that these 2 buses will not come with diesel engines. They will come with electric motors. So after years and years of being asked at town meeting day if we were going to electric buses, they can finally say yes, we're going to get 2 electric buses. We have a grant to make up the difference in cost between a diesel and electric bus, so that's what that includes. We're also going to apply $750,000 of our fund balance to pay down the tax rate. And we also have an article that includes a $6 million bond to do facility upgrades around the district, of which 4.5 of that is much needed work in Charlotte. And I think when the bond vote came here in Shelburne and we all voted and we upgraded the school, when we consolidated districts, we told everybody that the district is going to pay for Shelburne's D and E wing and roof and C wing improvements, and then at some point other areas in the district are going to need help as well, and we will pay into that. So that time has come for Charlotte, and so they're doing the first phase of their upgrade there. That's $4.5 million of the $6 million. Shelburne, of that $6 million, Shelburne is getting $380,000 of that for upgrades around the building. Most importantly is upgrades to the kitchen that we couldn't fit into the bond vote 5 years ago, and so that will be the biggest improvement for Shelburne. So I regret that the articles aren't up here in writing, and I hope that my verbal description of them is adequate, but I'll be more than happy to take questions if you have some.
Thank you, Dave. Beryl, you want to add anything?
Oh, I didn't see Barbara was back. I'm sorry, Barbara. My fellow board member, Barbara Martin, is in the back row. Apologize.
You want to add anything, Barbara? Okay. Thank you. Are there any questions of Dave? And we appreciate your attendance as well.
So we've eliminated the question about the bus by buying electric buses. Wait, you had a question?
Took you 9 years. That's why we're hesitating. We're not sure whether to clap or just, gee.
Dave, thanks. Great presentation. 2 questions, if I may. One relates to health insurance. Town faced a dramatic potential increase from Blue Cross Blue Shield, and with the cooperation of all of our employees, we were able to transfer to MVP, saving 6 figures from the town in that. I'm wondering if the school district had pursued that option. And my second question relates to something I heard on VPR this morning, where there may be an initiative in the legislature to require schools to provide free breakfast and lunch at no charge to all students. And I'm wondering if we're aware of that and what that might cost in addition if we had to go that route.
Well, the comment that's hanging out there where you say the legislature may require, if I reacted to everything the legislature said it may require
Understood.
action, I guess I'd be outlawing cell phones for everyone under 21 next week. Is that also as well? I'm not aware of the breakfast and lunch item. Are you, Jean?
I know that the Hunger Free Vermont has been working on that for quite a while. Our food service program runs $2.5 million, so if we were to turn that all into taxpayer expense, that would be quite a heavy lift.
But there is no doubt that kids who come to school fed and ready to concentrate and not hungry is definitely a benefit. So I can see where they're going for that. Healthcare.
Sorry, I should correct myself. I know that the $2.5 million is our total expense, but there is already a lot of federal subsidies for food, but it would still be good.
Yeah. For health insurance, it's a difficult question to answer. We're moving to a statewide health insurance contract for all instructional staff. And so that is all run out of VisBit through one provider. The hope, like I sarcastically mentioned, was that with Governor Scott's requirement to go to the single contract for the state, that it would cause it would create a bigger pool and you would have one negotiating body for healthcare, and you wouldn't have individual school boards negotiating their individual deals all around each of the 300 plus school districts. So there is hope that numbers could reduce it. I don't think we have the luxury of changing how we administer healthcare, but kudos to you guys for initiating that and saving money. As a taxpayer of Shelburne for only 15 years, the youngest guy in the room, from a residency standpoint, I appreciate that. So,
Dave, we had an increase. We also shared an increase in workers' comp. And my question is this? Could you comment on the claims history that we assume has driven this increase, and what measures might be in place in terms of safe workplace and such?
So, I know that we've had consultants come in yearly and brief us on our workman's comp history and looking forward. I know it's an issue that we are attentive to. We don't operate an unsafe workplace. But at the same time, I think the challenges of working in schools are different. And it's harder to be a teacher, physically and emotionally. So there's no doubt in my mind that that's part of it. I can't speak specifically to the numbers of the claims and the magnitude, but I feel like our performance has been decent in the numbers that I saw.
I think you're right, Dave, in pointing out that it's not the typical custodian slipping. It's teachers in classrooms. We have some very difficult students, and they need to be handled appropriately, and sometimes the adults in the room get hurt. So that's something that their insurance and the whole NEA, the whole teaching profession is working very hard at keeping our adults safe while trying to keep our children safe. It's a really different world than when I went to school.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions? We remind ourselves that the school budget is about 80% of our total. So this is what drives generally our tax rate, and it's important to follow it as closely as you can. We have another opportunity at town meeting itself, and I know they do a really good job of outreach and supplying information, specifics, and we'll look back we'll have a printout, I know, of the articles themselves in the coming week, but we I'm sure they would say themselves as quickly as I could that they will welcome questions and interests from everybody. Don't hesitate. Ask us if you prefer, and we'll follow up and as quickly and thoroughly as we can. But we thank you for coming, and we again recognize a pretty extraordinary service of your own. We can't thank you enough, Dave.
Thanks.
Thank you,
very
Dave.
much. It's been awesome to do this, and it's been, I feel, better and more effective than getting an MBA. Because I was able to live in Shelburne while I did it. And I would encourage everybody to, it was great to have the people that came up and talked about wanting to contribute to the community at different points in their life. And school board isn't as bad as everybody makes the jokes out to seem. It's just like select board is just time, you know? And I didn't get a chance to say this in the presentation, but my two favorite days of the year, one of them used to be the Shelburne Craft Fair, which unfortunately passed away this year. But my second favorite day is CBU graduation. And anybody can go except when Bernie's speaking, then you need a ticket. But going in there, and even if you just see 5 kids speak, and you hear one kid sing, and you see all the kids going across that stage, it's amazing, and it gives you great hope for the future. And it's wonderful to see it and be a part of it. So, thank you very much.
Thanks, Dave. Any other comments, questions? We're hearing none. Any questions again out in the audience? Hearing none. All right, our next step is to continue with the public hearing. And I think, again, as an organizing principle, we'll stay with questions you might have. If you have specific questions to the dollar or to the item, please make your own judgment about what constitutes a general statement or an opinion and what constitutes a question. Save the questions for when we get to those items as we proceed through the budget. But we'd be interested to hear opinions and attitudes and suggestions at this point. Does anyone have any? Given that, I think we'll step through, and I would suggest, Lee, if you and Peter agree, we would start with revenue. Do you want to first give a summary of the week's
Sure, thank
changes?
you. Many of you were here in the room over the past several meetings and have been following this closely. When we met last week, the board had several suggestions. There were a number of questions about various aspects of the budget, but primary changes in this draft compared to the last draft are that it includes 2 specific items baked into the numbers, so we have an accurate estimate of what the tax increase would be. We included now the presumed select board salaries as they have been approved before, and the open space fund at $30,000 as suggested last week is included in this. There were some other lesser changes made. The difference this week is this draft, and again, it's a draft budget, would lead to a 6.79% increase in the municipal portion of the property tax rate. Again, the baseline being the 4.1% increase based on fixed costs and debt.
Thank you, Lee. I don't know whether, I didn't see Ann, well, we can start with a question that you didn't get to ask at the last meeting last week, which is appropriate because it was about reserve fund. Would you like to start?
Are you talking about the revenue number for, I was talking about the revenue number?
Yeah, that might be helpful if you let people know who you
I
are.
recall from last week, my question was around the revenue.
Sorry, can I?
You can tell us who you are, Ann, if you would.
I'm Ann Bentley, and I live in Shelburne. Do I have to say more than? No. So my question last week was around, as I recall, the revenue number for
Rescue.
rescue. Yes, not dispatch. And I understand the Medicare, Medicaid reimbursement rates have dropped. it was a more basic, call it business question, as to if those rates have dropped, what are we doing to control the cost relative to that, or to do something to improve the revenue? That was my question. Does that make sense, Jerry?
Yes? Lee, you want to address that?
Well, I know that Jacob Leopold is here, Rescue Chief, and he may be best positioned to help inform us on that.
Jake?
Jake Leopold, Shelburne resident, Chief of Rescue. To sort of address the question, what we're doing to improve our revenues. It's not really a business where we want to increase the traffic, I guess, sort of sadly to respond that way. We have an ongoing conversation in the district for emergency medical services to sort of track what the billing rates are. This year we increased our billing rates. Now, that only increases our revenue so much simply because as the number of calls, which are Medicare and Medicaid, increase overall in terms of the proportion relative to non-Medicare, Medicaid, or full billings, our revenue just can't keep up. And sadly, the number of Medicare, Medicaid billings are increasing simply because of the sort of aging population in the state of Vermont. So it's not a problem specific to Shelburne. It's more of a problem sort of across the state. But what we try to do to sort of offset that, sadly, is increase the billing rates for private insurance. And then we also always try to cut costs as much as possible. To cut our costs, we've deferred equipment purchases. We have stuck with maintenance agreements to keep the current equipment that we have in service a bit more. We're changing our apparatus replacement schedules from outright purchases every 5 years to be a remount process where we maintain a large portion of that ambulance and we replace the chassis where we take that actual box, the sort of patient care compartment, and we remount that on a new apparatus or on a new chassis. That saves us 35 to 40% of the cost of a new ambulance every 5 years. So we're doing everything we can to sort of squeeze out as much efficiency in our budget, reducing our expenses, while sadly just sort of the nature of the industry is to keep those insurance billings sort of tamped down as much as possible. Hopefully that sort of addresses the question on hand.
It does. The overarching question then is...
Sorry, Ann, you're not going to be able to be heard by anybody.
So, and we don't have to keep going on this, but, and I don't know how this works in the state, but the overarching question would be, why would Shelburne continue to do that? If that's the state of affairs and we have to cover that cost, then let South Burlington do it.
Which cost?
If we have a revenue number that's dropping and a cost that can't support that.
I see. So the question is,
give it to
why
South
would...
Burlington. Give it to some other municipality. That would be the question.
Oh.
And you may not be able to answer that question.
So I think the question is, why would... So, I mean, right now, Shelburne Rescue doesn't have an impact to the actual taxes that Shelburne residents pay. We support ourselves entirely from insurance billings. I think what you're suggesting is that if the trend continues this way and we want to maintain a municipal service, the result then would reasonably be or logically be that it would start to become a tax burden to the residents.
I think it is more than... Lee, what is the cost of rescue?
My understanding is there is no tax impact to running Rescue. Rescue is a self-supported
It's
agency.
self-funded.
Has been for about 12 years now.
The only department that...
Yeah.
The only department.
It's a reasonable question what's going to happen in a decade. I mean, that if we start trending what that looks like, if we might not be able to maintain ourselves, I don't know if that's a question for this year. And then a question of consolidation of ambulance services across the state is a question that is already being answered in rural areas with services just shuttering their doors because the town chooses not to have an ambulance service. And then you're dealing with response times. So right now our response time is under 10 minutes. That would change if you don't have an ambulance right here in the center of town.
Yeah, it's interesting to note our neighbor, Heinsberg, is engaging this very question right now in terms of their future.
Their hearing's tomorrow night, public, for anyone who's interested.
Yeah, it's an interesting event to follow. Are you all set, Ann?
I guess so.
Thank you. Jamie has been especially helpful to all of us in formulating questions in revenue, largely addressing funds. You want to just step through?
I could. I mean, this gets a little granular. I don't know if we want to go question by
think we can
question
move
on
through
this.
them
We can.
with
Yeah, I
some
mean,
dispatch. Yep.
Do you have outstanding questions after Lee?
I mean, most of these were answered. Some of these will be, I think, decisions we'll ultimately
have to make,
deliberate, right?
Yeah.
On some of these
The
bigger
ambulance
items.
fund
I mean,
transfer, Peter?
I had questions generally around, we have a number of town funds, so my question was, what are the balances in the fund? Because we have a lot of fund transfers in the operating budget we're looking at, so I just wanted to get a sense of, you know, what does the piggy bank look like against the year-over-year budget? So Peter was tremendous with responding to that, and the question about rescue is one of those. You know, there's a rescue fund that's sort of receiving the billings, and they're applied against the expenses, so it's a neutral, right?
We had raised on a couple of occasions the question of where was the gator, and there it is in 37. So any further questions on our parts?
On the revenue side?
Yeah, revenue?
I don't think so.
There's an opportunity, it seemed to me, in 36, this is page 4, 36, by reducing the transfer from the Bay Park Fund by 2,000 and giving consideration to purchasing potentially a high-quality used gator versus a new one.
Yeah, we did talk about, can we lease that instead of buying it? I don't know if we've looked at.
If the Gator Fund was an estimate, is that correct?
The 10.
The
Yeah.
10 was
Can we
the
reduce it to
gator
8?
plus maintenance, right?
Yeah.
Right.
The way I understood it was.
So if we were even,
Six or so was the gator, wouldn't it?
Probably not, right?
no, I think it's
I don't know if anyone's
substantially
looked at
more
that.
than that. Certainly if we could even buy it, and there's no guarantee we can even with this proposed funding, we would look at all options, whether used leasing or not buying one at all and putting the money into actual trail repair.
All right, so that's a candidate reduction for later in the night. Would you say, all of us?
Well,
36?
everything is a.
I was gonna
is a
say,
candidate.
Everything's a candidate, but
I wouldn't recommend lower than that, just in terms of the actual need that's out there on trail repair, but obviously, it's all part of the conversation. I think we could spend that 10 simply on the repair, even not buying a vehicle. But
Okay.
clearly, it's a candidate for
Okay.
consideration.
all right. We move to expenditures. Again, we can step through it. The fire rescue facility site analysis was one. We've had some questions from the public as well. It might be helpful if I gave you a very brief explanation of where we stand on that.
I think it would be.
Yeah. We are first yet determining the suitability of the Rice site, so-called Rice property site. That process, you recall, nearly a year ago was anticipated to conclude by now, in which case we contemplated coming back to you in this town meeting, should the site have been determined to be suitable, to propose purchase of it at a fixed amount of $650,000 and an investment in so-called hard infrastructure, pre-construction hard infrastructure that at the time we estimated would be at least 200. It may, as events unfold, increase to as much as 350. We are not doing that this town meeting because the process by which the suitability of this site was to be determined has not concluded. A quick description of why is that it got off to a much later start than we anticipated, and that had mostly, if not entirely, to do with the property, with the outfit that had the option to buy the property, and various transactions that they underwent while we just sort of waited. So that process completed sort of late summer, and that delay was enough to push this forward. We're anticipating at the moment that any question about the fire rescue site purchase and investment, infrastructure investment, would be taken up no later than town meeting this year, election day this year, and very likely would be held, a vote would be held on election day in November. That means that we put a small amount in the budget to account for transaction costs, because should that vote be positive in November, now we're saying now we now anticipate will come to you in November if the site is determined suitable, with a proposal to spend up to $1 million on acquisition and investment in that site. That money has to be borrowed. You could expect there would be costs in this budget, which runs to 2021. But as it turns out, those costs are not likely to occur in this budget that we're considering. They would occur in the following year. So we're not putting it off for convenience. That's just the way the calendar of financing is going to work. Meantime, we would, however, spend what we're estimating to be $5,000 in transaction costs, bond counsel and other costs that would be associated with the financing of the purchase. Sometime in January, a year from now, should the town vote to approve, we would be concluding tax anticipation financing of this purchase. So for anyone who remembered that we were going to come back to you, for anyone who's concerned about the expenditure in this budget, the answers are that we will be back by our estimate at this point on election day. The benefit, by the way, we feel is that it's an optimal occasion for town input, that we would see as many voters possibly as on any other occasion in the year or the next year. We'll come back to you, and should you approve, what we now know is at least $650 and could be as much as an additional $350,000. The heavy duty cost of those will occur in the next budget. And next year at this time, we will no doubt possibly be wrestling with that. But for the moment, that animal's out of the cage, and we're only dealing with what may be transaction costs. So that explains the $5,000 that you'll see. Are there any questions that we could help you with further on that? Hearing none, the next item is, and I'm going to track along here with some that we've identified. I know that's a disbenefit to you, but it helps us here organize. The next question had to do with grant-funded projects in planning and zoning. We had a response to that seemed adequate to me, to any of us. Was there any further questions there?
No, this is line 6.
Yeah.
Page
6
line
on
six. This was,
line,
these were the
page
two
6,
projects
33.
discussed at budget day, though.
Right.
Certified
Dean,
local
off the
government.
top of your head, this leverages a certain amount, is that correct? Do you know what the amount is?
It depends on
Which grants come through?
Correct.
Okay, fair enough. All right.
Right, but what looks like a significant increase would be
set
very
off by the-
primarily offset by grant funds. So
Right.
what looks like a large expenditure would also be reflected in revenues for those grants if they're received. If they're not received, then the money's not spent.
Right.
And of course, those are applications, the outcome of which we don't know. So now on to buildings and grounds. Several have had questions about the capital projects and to what those.
I'm sorry.
Sure.
I don't know if we discussed
And
this.
jump in, Mary, would you, at any point?
Thank you, Mary.
Yeah, I'm here. I'll jump in.
Okay. The assessing salaries, that was the help with this round of assessing, correct?
Yes, so again, on the assessing side, because we're going through reappraisal, we hired a part-time assessor, and her salary and any expenses are all fully funded by the reappraisal fund. So again, what looks like a significant jump is offset
That's what
by
I thought. I just
what we're
wanted to
pulling
make
out of that
sure.
reappraisal fund.
Okay, good. Thank you.
The state collects some monies throughout the years to, in effect, fund towns to almost entirely pay for appraisal. You heard Dave make the question about reappraisal, and we are undergoing one at this point. Okay. Town energy improvements, the question was asked with our announced interest, if not initiative, in energy conservation, the great success we've had with the solar installation on the new library. Was this figure, how is this figure accountable? Lee, do you want to respond?
Sure. So we're proposing a certain amount of money in the budget for efficiency improvements. For example, we've launched an initiative in this building to replace the older fluorescent tubes with LED lamps. So not only do they use much less electricity, but in a case like my office, it means that one tube serves the purpose of 3 fluorescent tubes. So not only is the one tube saving energy, but I'm not running all of the lights. So that's a way where we have to spend some money up front, but the longevity of the devices and their savings pays off. So we don't have any specific tangible projects in mind, but I'm hoping that we can continue to make those incremental investments, whether it's lights or motors or other devices that ultimately will hopefully be saving us money over the long haul.
Okay, anything else on 6? Jamie, Colleen, Mike, Mary?
But I think that, as much as we want to make that investment, we've talked about the fact that until our overall debt burden starts to go down in 2021, that this is, and next year is going to be a particularly challenging year for all of the taxpayers. And if this is a spot that we could potentially defer for a year or two, it might just make it a little bit easier for people. Especially when we don't really have like as Lee said, a tangible idea for the use of this money.
I marked this as potentially a $2,000 reduction. Do you want to leave that as a candidate?
From 5 down 3, you're saying?
Well, it's at 10.
No,
It's
10
at
to 8.
10.
Proposed at 10.
It's 10,000 without anything.
5,000 increase.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would probably reduce it more.
So we mark that and come back to,
Or
okay?
if you keep some in, maybe you level fund it, or maybe as suggested, you take it out entirely. I mean, all
Or
of these are
just-
subject to discussion.
I always like the idea of like having like a placeholder, even if we leave, like 1,000 there. But if we're gonna have to start making some hard decisions, that's where I would start. Someplace where we don't have a plan.
For instance, the lights example is investing some money to save us more in the long run. So it'd be nice to know, like, can we get a sort of return on investment, but.
I don't disagree with you at all. And that's why we made the investments we did in the library being as energy efficient as it is over what the building existed there last year. I totally agree with you.
Want to put it at
Let's
8?
do a placeholder. And
I
we can
agree.
come back to it.
Yeah, let's
8?
just.
1.
8 is fine.
8's
I would have said
fine?
1.
Okay, we're all together on that, Mary?
Well, no, we're not together.
Let's just
I
put
would've
a
said
placeholder. I don't think we
Okay.
have a.
All right,
All right, we don't have a number in mind.
decision time. Okay, on police, and Bob and Mike are here. We appreciate it, Lieutenant. We appreciate the return. And there are, I think we would sort out dispatch as a later matter. But there are, and Peter and Lee have responded wonderfully to a number of questions in the police budget per se. we're making everybody aware that as it happens tomorrow here, Lee and I, with Mary's long-distance participation, are going to have the initial meeting with representatives of the police department union. Their contract expires in June 30, so we will formally start the process of renewing that. And it has to be understood by all of us, we're all adults in the room, that much could be changed here positively and negatively with a new contract, especially in terms of compensation, certain work conditions, and so on and so forth. So in some ways it's awkward. We don't know. Well, we will not know. In some other ways, it's well to keep it in mind because we want to be prepared for whatever eventuality we think is reasonable, because this budget would cover those expenses. At the moment, we cannot detail them. So this is something better than guesswork, we're hoping. So many of these questions run to capital matters, equipment matters, and services versus compensation. Understanding that, radio expense 23, which is page 723, was a question in terms of why that increase, given the potential investment in radios. And while you're at it, Mike, you might just briefly review that investment, because that's a significant capital item. Lieutenant Thomas is going to join us at the microphone.
Mike Thomas, Shelburne Police. I would just like to clarify something to start with, that there are two budgets. There's a patrol budget and a dispatch budget.
Mm-hmm.
They both fall under the police.
Correct.
In the chief. I just
Yeah.
want to make sure you understood that.
No, I thought it would be good to start with the patrol
Yep.
and then work our way to dispatching.
In your question?
Radio, you might just briefly give everybody an idea of the 200,000 plus.
Okay, that radio. The 200,000 plus is in reference to our radios and communications being inoperable, and they are not up to standard with area departments. We cannot communicate with Burlington. We cannot communicate with South Burlington. Sometimes we have trouble getting to dispatch. You'll often see Bob run around and hold his radio up in the air just trying to reach our dispatch center. We are still analog. We are not digital. Most of the departments around us are digital. The radios have reached a point in their life where they're beyond repair, and we just can't upgrade them to what we need. So we're talking radios in the cars, radios, patrol radios. Am I missing anything? Portable radios. Life expectancy of the new radios, they say is 7 to 10 years. We're looking at quality radios to get us through. It's all about officer safety and the inability to communicate with those around us.
And this, you might add, Mike, is not something you can do piecemeal.
Absolutely
You
not.
can't replace 2 and 18 next year. I mean, this is a wholesale replacement of the entire system at once, and there'll be some cost efficiencies in doing that, as well as some discount in not having to do it in years following.
Can you remind us where that line item is on the 200K? Where does that live?
Peter, perhaps you could speak to your proposed financing of that project if it's approved?
Yeah, for a expenditure of that amount, we didn't put it in the budget. It would be a separate article, much like when we make larger purchases and other items. So there would be an article on the town meeting ballot to borrow $210,000 or somewhere around that amount to finance that purchase. So if that gets approved, then that would be put into the tax rate that we charge in July.
And then this 14.5 would go away. This particular line item would go away.
I don't know if that's a maintenance cost that's in.
No, I think that's the next
15.5.
question of
One was a
My-
maintenance cost, I don't know which line item she's on, one was a maintenance, increase. And the other was for, I believe, we were gonna try to get at least one more portable radio, and they were about 45 for the Kenwoods.
I mean, my personal view on that is that we should see the number in here and assume it's going to be approved. It's no different than the open space fund or any other ballot item.
No, same.
Ultimately,
I was gonna
because-
ask why we did want to do that. Was there a rationale for making it a separate?
Well, traditionally, if you're borrowing, you have to do that as a
I
separate
see.
article. You can't just put $200,000 into the budget.
Because it's
Obviously,
gonna be
that would
borrowed.
create a huge tax increase.
Right.
So traditionally, with bond issues, if it's a big item like that, we say that's not in the base budget, but it is a separate article, and if you vote yes for that article, then the tax impact is whatever.
But it was to be financed over 5 years?
Again, with a 7 to 10 year, you probably would want to maybe go 7 or 8 years, probably not all the way to 10 years.
So
that could be
the
discussed.
article warning would reflect, let's say we land at 6%, just for argument's sake, right? It would show 6.25, whatever the.
You know, 1.8 or something.
If that article was passed.
If it were
would be-
approved,
right,
the
we
200K
would give what
translates
the
into
impact
a
would be.
cumulative 6 point. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I
Base
just want to
budget-
make sure
Base budget plus
everybody
voted
sees
articles
the total
equals the total
increase
rate.
and that it's
Correct.
transparent to the public is probably the best way to say it, right? We
Right.
want to make sure it's sort of, everybody
Well,
understands
The same thing
it's
as
not.
the
You know,
plant.
I think you make an excellent
Right.
point, because it should be
Yeah.
a working number for us now. I mean, we're aware now that there's a possibility that that is approved. There has been support here for that initiative. And so we, in our forecast, should include what is expected, what the potential increase is of that specific article, just as open space, whether it shows up in these pages specifically or not. So you make a good point that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my point is you want to see the overall impact in this fiscal year. So if there are no payments associated with that bonding, then I guess this is a fair view of it. If there are, then we should see whatever that.
Yeah. So when we
Number looks
forecast
like,
what
right,
we think
assuming
is
it's
the
approved.
overall increase, it's going to be accurate. So between now and next week, it might be good just to have the.
Sure, of course.
The impact, yeah.
And that's typically what would happen. You would borrow the money in the new fiscal year, but the first payment wouldn't be due until the following year. But we would certainly,
And if that's the case,
but we
then
would certainly at town
it has
meeting.
no effect.
But we would certainly at town meeting indicate when that payment comes due, your tax rate will be impacted by
Yeah.
whatever. Not in that
Right.
coming year, but the year before,
That's
the
good.
year
Yeah.
after.
No different than the library and the Quint and
Exactly.
All
open
of our
space.
capital.
Yep.
Yeah.
costs.
No.
Okay, no,
It's
that's
same.
fair.
So we're not estimating a direct cost in this proposed fiscal year budget, if this is approved?
Not at this point. I mean, there may be a possibility if we wanted to put some money aside to pay part of it, so we don't have to borrow the full 200,000.
And I was gonna ask, you've done financing where you've had larger upfront bill or notes because you get a better interest rate. Is that the idea in a case like this?
Well, we would go to bid for, this would be kind of a medium purchase. It's certainly not the magnitude of the library
Right.
bond where you have fewer options. But there's a number of banks in the area and other institutions that would finance this kind of
And
an offering.
we're anticipating that the cost would be spread equally among the subsequent years?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, we can get moving.
Okay?
Gail?
Now, I think, I'm sorry, if you'll permit, Gail,
sorry,
one.
Gail.
I think the question that we had follows from all of that. 23 shows a radio expense. And while we understand that this money isn't good until July, the question was, given at the minimum 50-50 chance that the system gets replaced entirely, what constitutes radio expense?
I don't believe that would be necessary, because that was, right now, we're short radios, and we've got officers trading radios off. So we were looking for the cost of a radio, a portable radio.
Okay.
So that wouldn't be necessary, is my belief, correct?
It says maintenance contract expense. Is that for maintenance of the current radios, assuming the new radios weren't approved?
Where are you seeing that?
Line 23.
23,
I just see
page
radio
7.
expense.
Yeah, so if you look at the printout that Lee
Yeah, the
gave us, that
response.
he emailed
Yeah.
at noon,
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
and it's on the second page.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's how that was explained to us, but your question is, why is that increasing?
Right.
And why is it necessary if
Is-
we, and what would happen to those funds?
Exactly.
Right,
Yeah.
and
I don't know honestly what we do with it because it's a bet. I mean, it's a 50-50 bet. You have to provide for it. But the response had more to do with service contract increases, expected service contract increases year to year, right?
Well, then maybe we could earmark that if that does pass, then we would do something else with that fund, with those funds.
That
Would
number
would
that
you
you're
let us,
talking,
would you let us know your name before?
Jim Mack, that expenditure is the service contracts for the radio system. The radio systems will have a warranty period, but after the warranty period, they do have to be covered. And some of the infrastructure is still here. We're adding to some of the infrastructure that we
Gotcha.
currently have.
So
it's not-
it assumes approval of the radio, call it overhaul,
Yes.
wholesale. This is an assumption in part
Yes,
that the 200 grand will be approved.
that's correct.
Okay,
But it's a maintenance contract for both new and existing equipment,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yes.
okay,
And a
Gotcha.
possibly new portable radio.
Yeah. All right.
okay,
Good.
thank you.
So, I don't know if this shows up in another place, but there is also a 50,000 item for upgrading a repeater or upgrading an actual transmission system. Is that correct, or is that?
There is, yeah.
there is currently in the dispatch part of the budget, a
Right.
proposal for $25,000.
Okay.
We have, separate from the radio issues you've just heard about, we have challenges in the overall communications infrastructure. There are repeaters on water tanks and towers and ways that the radio signals get transmitted throughout the region. There are some weak spots in that. We have known for years it needs to be addressed. If that's approved in the budget, the goal there is to do some engineering analysis and start to identify exactly what's our critical path needed to improve upon those systems. Might it be an additional repeater at a new location? Might it be mobile repeaters in vehicles, as some other municipalities have gone? Don't know what that answer is, but we need to start bringing the intellectual horsepower to the table to help us analyze and understand, again, what's our critical path forward. If we could only do one thing, what would that one thing be that would start to improve our
And so
systems?
it's separate from the radio.
Separate from that radio
And if the
project.
radio bond were to fail, we'd still need to do that separate work.
Correct, because that affects police, fire, and rescue, and interoperability with our mutual aid partners.
Okay.
There's a related question. We haven't gotten to, as you point out, the dispatch side yet. But there's a related question that I think we're interested in, which is to what degree are our contract, the contracts that we serve share in that investment? And we can wait on that until we get there. The next item is general equipment. This was an increase of some 20%, and where we,
Which one was this?
this is
Line
We're third,
30.
please.
30.
30.
Line 30. Okay. General equipment.
Where?
Page.
Line
Page.
Whatever.
I think
Still on
that's,
page
seven.
six?
I think
Page
that's been
7.
dealt with.
Page 7, line 30,
Oh.
in police.
It's 1,000
Just an
increase.
increase of 1,000?
Right, and let the lieutenant speak to that.
It looks like that's general officer equipment and just inflationary costs and the increase in officer equipment continuously going up, any emergency
And
service.
these are consumables.
Yes,
Some of these are consumables altogether and just simply have to be replaced and,
yes.
okay. Vehicle maintenance is 29. That relates to, which is up considerably from last year. As we've all noted, it's reduced 5 here from the 30, but it remains a pretty significant increase. Given as well the proposal to buy 2 new cruisers, what accounts for And could we defer one cruiser to the following year?
The answer to the first question was that's mechanics time. And the deferment of a cruiser, I'll defer to Bob.
So I think Bob Lake with the Shelburne Police Department. So the increase in the maintenance budget is going to go hand in hand with the purchase of 2 new cars. In the past, we've had extended warranties on vehicles that have allowed us to run these things up to 100,000 miles. We found out late last year that that's not, they're not offering a 100,000 mile warranty or an extended warranty on police cars anymore. So you saw an increase from 6,000 to 13,000 in the 17-18 budget, and that's because we wound up having to repair some cars that had high mileage on them. What we're looking to do is minimize that expense, the vehicle maintenance expense, by reducing the number or the amount of time that we're keeping vehicles on the road. So we're looking to have replaced these 2 vehicles. The 2 vehicles we'll have that will be spinning out of fleet will have 70,000 miles on them. And that'll be an optimal period of time. We'll be able to maximize the value of those vehicles, and as well as have the dependability and kind of get away from the extra dollars in the maintenance.
Do we see any revenue on the sale of what we're retiring, or no?
So we have in the past, because the vehicles, for instance, we had a Ford Explorer and a Chevy Tahoe that we sold. Because we ran the Ford Explorer up to 114,000 miles, we got $6,000. The Chevy Tahoe we ran up to 150,000 miles, and I think we got $8,000 for that. So I don't have any numbers. I tried to get some numbers. I tried to get some estimations from individuals before I came tonight. But I think the recovery will be at least a third more than we've seen in the past.
So what would you call it, like 40 for the 2?
To sell both the vehicles?
Yeah.
For the replacements? Net?
Net, no. I'm thinking that we would probably be down in the $12,000 range.
For both?
No, for each.
For both?
Okay, so
For each?
For each.
call it 25 on the revenue side, right? Is that, should that
We're
be?
talking about the vehicles we're looking to spin out of fleet,
Yeah.
correct? Yes.
Yeah. We're just trying to match the revenue side, right? If we're going to agree to buy 2 new vehicles, there should be revenue coming back.
There should
for
be an
what we're
offset.
selling.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
I guess that's what I'm questioning is where does that 25, because every dollar helps.
Right.
As far as us
Oh, I
looking
agree.
at this.
That's
so-
almost a cruiser. I mean, so net, the improvement net might be, okay. And we're all bearing in mind that when you talk about emergency vehicles, it's the number of, and public works equipment, it's the number of hours on them, not necessarily the mileage, fire department, any vehicle or equipment of that sort. So 70,000 might sound a lot like what we're riding around in. It's a lot less that I'm riding around in. But 70,000 masks what might be an extraordinary number of hours on the vehicle and engine. And that's really the metric here that's important, correct?
Correct.
Okay?
So I think I'm hearing a desire for a clearer demonstration of where that revenue shows
Yes.
up as an offset to
If
the
we were to
expense.
move forward with the 2 new vehicle
On 39.
acquisition and 39, then I'd like to see the 25, 24, whatever
Yeah.
you feel is fair coming
Yeah,
back.
absolutely.
Right.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Is the equipment that's going to be replaced because of the configuration of the new vehicles, has that got any value or worth?
No. Because the cages in the vehicles.
Who wants those in their own car, right?
Who wants those, right?
Yeah.
And then the other problem is that the Ford did a rework of their vehicles, so the old equipment is not going to fit in the new car.
One thing I will say, if I may, whether we're buying 1 or 5 cruisers, we buy them on the state contract, which, if you ask any police chief, they'll tell you it's absolutely the best deal you can get anywhere. Unlike some other items like computers, where the state contract price is actually higher than I can get. But cruisers, we're getting the absolute best price possible, whether we're buying one or a dozen.
Mary, you got a comment?
No, I'm listening in. I'm satisfied.
Okay. Bob?
Yeah, just a question. Your pricing here.
You want to come to the mic, Bob? I'll tell you why we do this, because the audience viewing at home gets to hear you when you speak into the mic.
Sure. I just had a question on the 87K. Does that include the equipment to go in it, including the radios that you've talked about replacing? No. So that would be on top of that 87K. Thank you.
Gail? No, sorry.
Gail Albert, and I just wanted a clarification. It wasn't clear to me why you were equating the single-year ballot item for natural resources with a bond for
What we
police
were
cars.
saying is, while a request like open space, and in this case, a capital investment in new radios, might take the form of a separate article than the budget, we would prefer all through this process to calculate an anticipated tax rate increase should those separate articles pass, versus just having a tax rate impact for the budget itself. It seems disingenuous to have a budget amount and end up at 0.2 when you have two other articles on the warrant, 50-50 chance they're voted, and that would take the impact to 0.3. We'd rather be dealing with 0.3. So we're anticipating in a 50-50 circumstance that, in this case, open space as well as the radios would pass. That flows into our calculation of what's an acceptable increase now versus adding it on later.
But only for the portion of the expense that falls within this budget, if that makes sense. So the open space funds are immediately contributed if the vote passes. In this case, the 200K would be bonded, so there would only be some percentage of that might have an impact as an expense in this budget. So that was the request from me, was let's just make sure any expense is reflected.
Just in an effort to be transparent to everyone, so everyone knows if this is our base budget, and if this passes, it's going to increase by this much. If this passes, it's going to increase by this much. Everybody likes to vote for their favorite projects, but if they all pass, the rate goes up for everybody.
Okay? It's good.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Fire but why don't we skip the dispatch, because while you're sitting. Dispatch is also on page 7. Page 8. There were questions relating to overtime and double time, and I'll of course repeat the understanding that we started the meeting with, which is much of this, anything in the way of compensation, wages, salaries, overtime, double time, is driven largely by contract provisions. This would reflect current provisions. We are about to negotiate a renewal of the contract. Changes could be positive, changes could be negative, and we can't bet on any of that. The question that where we left it last, I think could be summed up by saying that the data you provided showed a 50-week coverage. Especially for those not as knowledgeable, that looked like, if you add 2 weeks vacation, that looked like a new person. And we kind of left it on the basis that what is the decision making on the part of the department about hiring versus in an attempt to reduce overtime, double time, versus accepting this increase this year.
Let me first address the increase this year. We're asking for $79,095. And if we look historically, back in fiscal year 17-18, that was 85.3. In 18-19, it was 80,500. This year, we're running, we were granted $63,088, and 2 weeks into the second half of the year, we're already pushing 60%. If we were to hire someone, if we're to hire a new officer at $21 an hour, that officer would make $43,680 a year. And the benefits package average for dispatch is $21,000. So you're looking at $64,680 to replace that cost, which is more. If we have another person on, that 16 hours a week would be covered, but now we would have 3 people on 3 days a week, or 3 8-hour shifts, 24 hours, where we don't have the call volume for 3 people. So my suggestions would be, well, we could really use a part-time officer to help. Right now we have 3, 2 that put in a lot of time, and one of the fellows that just left stayed on part-time. And he has a job that takes him off different times of the day. And he was supposed to work this weekend, and because he works for Vermont Alerts now, he got called out for that.
So
If you take the, go ahead.
You're suggesting hiring a part-time could drive down some of the overtime costs?
Well, and we're diligently looking for part-timers all the time.
Right.
We're actually talking to one tomorrow that works for state, and she's interested in coming as a part-time police officer and part-time dispatcher. We're trying to work out how that will work.
What's your sense, Mike, in the next 5 months, because this is a budget that takes effect July 1, do you think it's reasonable to assume that a part-time hire is a possible alternative to this figure?
That and modifications to the schedule. We will very shortly be going up to 8 full-time dispatchers, which puts our numbers where they should be. Hopefully we'll stay at that. Dispatcher longevity, for some, it's either really long or within the first couple of years, they leave. So that therein lies the problem. If you deduct from that $79,000, the double pay paid out is $27,750. So we're actually only, for overtime, we're only asking for $51,344. That double pay number, double pay number that's a fix. That's something we can't change. Mm-hmm. If you figure that out, break it down to a $24.09 an hour average, including shift diff, it's 2,131 hours divided by 52 weeks. That hits the 40-hour-a-week limit that we were talking about. So those numbers are pretty spot on. I don't think we're going to change them.
Yeah.
And I think it would cost more right now at this time to hire another full-time person than to continue business as we are.
Which, again, that was my point before, that sometimes paying overtime for an experienced employee we can use more flexibly than hiring somebody else with additional benefits is overall a better business decision.
I believe so.
Yep, I agree.
Okay, Mike?
Yeah, no, I
The
agree.
448 is how many full-time?
The what?
Line 25, the 448, 724 represents how many? Dispatch?
That's full-time, yes.
Right, how many?
8.
8.
Okay. Any other questions?
No.
Mary?
Good.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I had you on mute, so I didn't make background noise.
Nope.
Just while the officer is speaking, and I don't mean to go backwards, I'm having a hard time figuring out exactly how many police officers there are, going back to police. I have the overview in front of me, but I'm having trouble adding it up. I don't know if there's 4 full-time police officers or more. Can somebody tell me that? You mind? I'm sorry to go backwards.
How many
I know we're on
officers?
dispatch.
14 full-time equivalent.
Because 14 full,
14.
Full-time equivalents.
Yes. That's counting myself,
does
the
that
chief. I'm
Does
sorry?
that include sergeants and lieutenants and corporal too? Yes?
Yes, and the chief.
Thank you. And 3 part-time, is that right?
I'm sorry?
3 part-time, she's asking?
Right now, yes, 3.
All right, very much. Sorry to go, little folks down.
Can I just
I'm all set.
can I just make a general comment on dispatch revenue? Maybe more of a question than a comment is. It strikes me that we might have an opportunity to negotiate more, right, on these contract rates. I don't know. It seems
Yes,
like we have
and I
a
think that's-
captive group of communities here who probably don't have a great plan B.
We're reaching out to communities that need services, and I think it's our goal to, early this year, set the stage for some type of new contracts, whether they be flat rate or.
Yeah, that's certainly something I plan to look into in the next year, is moving to a more predictable budgeting arrangement for users and ourselves as well. The challenge is, in fact, there are multiple Plan Bs out there. For example, and we inherited a number of agencies from Grand Isle County because they thought we offered a very good service and we offered a better price. But the reality is they could be dispatched from almost anywhere on the globe. So it's a tricky business. We should charge a reasonable rate. We're providing an excellent service. But if you charge what you really want, they can hop around to almost anywhere.
Do they?
Well,
Have
again,
we tested that, or is it?
I mean, we didn't go poaching from Chief Taylor in St. Albans. They came to us, those
Right.
agencies.
I mean, I just see expenses continuing to increase in
Understood.
dispatch, so just trying to match
Yep.
whenever
So
we can.
my
revenue
plan is to
opportunities.
revisit the whole structure of how we charge for service, to try to increase revenue in a reasonable amount, and again, be more predictable for budgeting on both sides.
When do those contracts expire?
They're basically an annual contract that we automatically renew with them all.
December 31, June 30, what?
When we send out the next round of billing information to them, they know that what it's going to be, and they can negotiate to leave us if they wanted to, or
What's your take on that, as far as?
As
an
jumping around,
opportunity?
we've had agencies leave us. We had a number of agencies that left us and went to Middlebury Rescue's Dispatch Center. We took some agencies that jumped from St. Albans that came to us. But yes, they could jump to any one of the facilities that are out there. Lamoille County Sheriff's.
Why do they come to us versus Middlebury?
The ones that came to us, we just had, the last one that just came to us was Orwell. They wanted our level of service.
So it's not just price shopping? they're
No,
also
because they
where
were actually
quality-
getting it for a cheaper price out of Middlebury.
My question is, where are the contracts today? Are they going now until December 31, or are they rolling along
They
with
just roll
various
along.
expirations?
They just roll along.
Okay.
What we had set up originally was they just rolled from one year to the next.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I just raise it as something for management. And the team generally to
Yeah.
think about.
And we-
If it's an
we-
opportunity, let's.
And I'd like
look
to
at it.
expand on it because we've asked several times. I think, and in this spring, I don't think we should wait too much longer than that. We could have a presentation from you on what costs. How is the contract rate established? In other words, what costs are we charging for? Starting with that.
Yep.
So we have an idea of what cost, like the repeater. Is the repeater investment being reflected in those
Well,
costs?
some of those costs are attributed to them. Equipment that we have on Mount Pritchard, which we dispatch Williston and some other agencies off from, they pay a portion of that cost. So that is built into their numbers.
So presumably, if we make this investment in repeater
Well,
improvements.
this
those-
investment to the police side won't be charged out to a lot of those agencies. It would be only us and Heinsberg Police.
Okay. Well, I think a good starting point, don't you, might be for us to understand, as a matter of information, what constitutes that charge? What's in that charge that we're invoicing to these these organizations? and maybe follow from there, Lee, do you think?
Yes.
Well, I think the other thing that might be useful is knowing what the cost is for dispatch per voter for our community. And, you know, the most like similar example is the contract that we used to provide police services for Charlotte. And, you know, and this is back when I first came on the board, and we determined exactly how much it was costing voters here, or taxpayers here in Shelburne, and Charlotte was actually getting our police services for cheaper than what Shelburne residents were paying for. So, but we, you know, attempted to raise our prices, and Charlotte said, see you later, and they hired the state police. So just something to keep in mind.
Yeah. I think this is an issue that we don't need to wait too much into 2020 to follow up on. And is there any other question about police or dispatch? Once again, that was a fantastic presentation last week, Tom.
I
Mike.
apologize, I didn't realize we were gonna get into the radio thing, otherwise we would've had Tim here. He was our radio guy.
No, it was I mean, part of this has to be attributable to our ignorance, and this is extremely worthwhile. We're hoping that for the community too, who are listening and watching, to better understand just simply what these numbers mean and how they reflect operations and so on. So I thought that was just pretty extraordinary effort, and we can't be more thankful.
I think last week you had a great idea when you said maybe quarterly we could meet, or
Yeah, I do
6
think
months.
that would be, you know, very useful. And
To see
anything
where
that,
we are, where
I
we're
think so,
going.
yeah. I mean, again, just to
Yeah.
me at least, it felt like we have budget day and then we don't get to see you
Yeah.
guys. So it'd be good to
and
get to know
obviously
each other better.
anything that we as a board can do to enhance or talk about incentives to enhance recruitment. I mean, that's in all of the interest of the community. So we'd be nothing but encouraging there. So
Excellent.
Thank you.
okay, thank you. Any questions on anybody's part about police dispatch? If not, we'll move on to 9, which is highway. And thank you, Paul, for your patience. We've had some discussion about Pond Road, as no doubt we're all aware. I might sum it up by saying that there is no money in this budget for road treatments of Pond Road. We are going to talk some with those who are advocating treatment in whether chip seal or paving itself this spring, beginning this spring, and anticipate some further discussion toward the summer on what should be done, and that the issue, the question obviously will be brought up in next year's budget discussion, which unfortunately isn't going to be too far away, but we'll bring it up back again late in the summer. So are there any questions on any?
Tracy Bowden. I've been listening to you at home, and I apologize that I haven't been part of the discussion, and so I might have missed this. But the paving of the beach parking lot, is it currently paved now? So
No.
it is?
It's not.
It's in, no,
I
it's,
think part of it is.
it's in some distress
Why don't we ask-
part, yeah.
Why don't we ask the
Yeah,
pro here if it's,
Is the whole parking lot paved now?
The parking lot is not paved.
Okay.
The road into the parking lot to the boat ramp is paved.
Okay. My question is it a good idea environmentally to be putting a giant impervious surface right down by the lake by paving that parking lot?
We're not paving the parking lot.
Oh.
We're overlaying the road that's already paved, if it was gonna be done.
I thought I heard
But I think that
discussion.
is on the, that's way out where,
Okay.
I'll be long gone when that's
All right.
done.
I thought I heard discussion about paving the
well, no,
parking lot.
no, it's
I understood
it's
it
a good
was
point, Tracy.
actually,
We kind of got two things going
Yeah.
on here.
Yeah.
First of all, we'll get to that.
sorry.
No problem. Second of all, we can have that discussion right now. Some of us had understood from Paul's comments previously that he anticipated paving Beach Road.
Right.
Which
No,
is,
I think
we
everyone got mixed up a little bit.
We understand, Paul, that we misunderstood. But some of us thought that's what we heard.
Right.
And it seemed natural and logical and sensible that we're given a need to improve the beach lot parking lot while they're right there,
Right.
looking at it.
That's the conversation I remember
Right.
hearing.
And it's since been determined that that's not in the highway superintendent's plan, which would make it a standalone activity and a little more expensive for that reason. And I think my colleagues at this point are ready to decide that we would defer that beach parking lot treatment till next year. Okay? There is now, to add one more thing, there's a significant safety feature, which is something you're more than familiar with, and which we've learned about on Pond Road itself, particularly with school buses. So this is consideration that's kind of constant, and that isn't to neglect to mention environmental consequences of impervious service, however and wherever, especially that we're responsible for. So we appreciate it. Thanks.
Can I just add that if that is a concern, and between now and then, be interesting to have information about, I wondered about that too, what could the environmental impacts be?
I mean, we heard from a couple people, I received some comments too, that, sort of nice not being paved, right? Why would we pave this? Lee had some good thoughts as far as just if we do renovate the beach house at some point, does it make sense to pave it now? Probably not.
Right.
So
there's a lot of
between all that
factors there.
input, it just feels like not the right time to make a decision.
Yeah.
too.
All this environmental stuff that everybody worries about with the lake, what do they think all that dirt and mud and salt off that road? The gravel's washing out.
Yeah,
Blacktop
I think
doesn't
it
wash
was
down into the lake.
I think there was just a sense of character too, putting aside the environmental
But that's
considerations.
only the driveway in that's paved down there. The whole parking lot, unless Betsy's back there, I'm probably answering for her, but I don't think her budget was gonna pave from guardrail to guardrail. It's just to maintain what you already have, just like the roads. But once you let them go,
Yeah.
you never put them back.
Yeah. Well, I don't think anybody's pushing it out into some, indefinite future. I think the question was whether it was an investment this year or whether it's going to be in a year following. Do you want to add to Tracy's?
Yeah.
Thank you, Tracy.
You're welcome, thank you.
Hi, I just wanted to clarify that I think sometimes things are lost because we abbreviate in the budget. It was never intended to pave the entire parking lot. The intention was to just overlay the actual road, and then the rest of it would be re-gravelled. We have to put in more gravel in the actual parking areas. So we're not paving anything new that isn't already paved. It's just maintaining what's already there.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that clarifies what you were asking.
That is helpful actually to me. So you're talking about paving beyond the gate, basically, for
From the
And the
entrance
ramp?
gate
at the entrance.
all the way down, and it does go down to the boat ramp.
The center line.
Just the center.
Yeah.
So the parts that now are gravel would remain gravel,
Yeah.
but we need to add gravel.
And that's
and maintain
consistent with
that.
your
Just like
approach
with Bay
too, right?
Park, we have to add
Yeah,
gravel. And,
okay.
I already said that if you're gonna pave that, Beach Road and the parking lot should be paved all in the same year. It's a lot cheaper.
That's
You're only
right.
moving equipment in
Yeah.
one time, you're not moving down 1 year for Beach Road. Putting 200 ton down, then you're moving down. the
Yeah,
next year.
exactly.
I see.
You pay
It's a
mega
good
bucks.
point, Betsy, because we got in the habit of calling it beach
Yeah.
parking lot paving.
Yeah,
And
we abbreviate.
sometimes
and
you
have
can
to in the
generalize
writing,
to the
but-
point where it gets confusing, and
Yeah.
we appreciate your contribution. Thanks.
So,
So the 375 included some allocation for that paving.
I thought,
Whether it's the parking lot or
the center
some
line.
portion thereof, right?
375 on what?
On line
paving.
10,
Yeah.
on paving.
No, that had nothing to do with Beach Road and the parking lot.
It was Jerry's
Uh,
thought that we could make it that so.
That if we held the 375, we would include beach parking lot.
That-
And
that was
obviously,
the
that's
Okay.
no longer the case. I think we have to talk seriously about 350 versus 375.
right, so
Yeah.
what I thought might be helpful, because questions have been raised clearly about the beach road, but it was also raised about the the paving cycle generally. So I thought it might be helpful if Paul gave an introduction to how he approaches his retreatment cycle in the whole town as context, what he had hoped to accomplish next year with the amount that he's proposing, and that would then give us the context for what's the right number and for what purpose.
Yeah, we discussed learning your paving plan, mile by mile, where.
I don't know if we have to do mile by mile, but.
All night.
Well, I don't wake up in the morning and decide I'm just gonna go pave some road, because I usually walk every piece of road before I pave it, and I can tell you probably where every crack is, and I showed that to Mary last snowstorm, before I had to drop her off and go salt, and how you look at a road, you don't drive down it, and I say, oh, hell, I guess I paved this one today. That isn't how I judge a road. I judge a road that's breaking up. So you look at half a harbor road, where a mile of harbor road broke up enough to pave it, with all the truck traffic there is on it, you get another year out of it, it's gonna be potholes. You can't afford the potholes, that's all you do is hear complaints. And you can go down Spear Street, it's got about a mile and a half of road right there. Yeah, if you drive down your car, you don't see anything. Well, get out and walk that mile and a half, and you're gonna see these big wheel ruts.
Alligator
Just
tracks
like a
and all the
river
rest
running
of it.
right down through, just like Route 7. The minute you let it go, and you lose a year, you can't put the road back into shape. So if you have to rebuild a road, that's about $1 million to tear up a road and start over a mile.
I think what we're
So
saying,
I think
Paul,
we're only doing a patch job. It's not like the state lets them go, they have to go in and regrind them and everything else, because if we did that, that budget would triple every year.
I think what we're asking is you got $1 million worth of wisdom and expertise in your head. Do you chart which roads have been paved when? So do you have a 3-year max, 5-year max? Do you?
Yep, anywhere from 5 to 7 years on the main roads,
Okay,
12 to 14 on developments.
okay,
And I can tell you when every road is paved since 1979, if you want me to.
super. Okay.
And I
so-
guarantee you, if I tell you Shelburne Heights need a paving job, he's gonna tell me it doesn't, so I'm gonna let him write on a few potholes for a while, just to let you know.
Well, don't pay any attention to him.
Right, he's a new guy.
Because you see,
I only got here so I can get that road paved.
Right.
you're right, I have no back door here. And, that was a chip seal on Shelburne Heights,
Yeah.
long before people moved in up there, so we did a chip seal on that. Then after a few years, we did a 1.25 inch overlay. And last year, we did Morris Drive and, or the year before, Morris Drive and Potter Place, because it was all sagged out. You got Logan Court, Ravine Court, every one of them is in need of a repair. You got plus a mile, you got 1.5 miles of Harbor Road. I can sit here and name all kinds of roads. When they fall apart, you can't fix them. I believe in that retreatment budget. And once you let it go, and you can pick up the phone and call any paving company and ask them if I wasted the town's money the way I pave a road. And I can give you phone numbers for every one of them.
Well, we'd like to think, Paul, that's the case with everything here. That's the case with every vehicle. That's the case with every energy use. I mean, Lee at one point had a fix it first, kind of mantra. I mean, I don't think, I'm glad that that's the way Shelburne thinks generally. And as any of us who've been in the road business to any extent understand, it's really expensive from the 1 year you missed to the next year, because it could involve base, it could involve petroleum that's up by, $18 a gallon, that kind of thing. The question to you is, if we drop 25,000 from the 375 and budgeted 350, what on your chart is going to suffer the most?
I'll tell you that come probably the 1st of May. I'll let you know when spring pretty much over.
Yeah.
Where it's really broke up, what it's gonna cost you.
How does that help us now, Paul?
Doesn't help me, I can't give an answer.
Okay.
If the spring raises hell and it opens up the cracks on one of these roads.
Gotcha.
I mean, you gotta do what you gotta do, I gotta
Yep.
do what I gotta do.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I tell you, the most important thing in any town is, and I said it before, is highways. Because everybody needs water, everybody needs sewer and all this stuff. But everybody travels that road. If they can't make it in the wintertime, if they're going over potholes this big, and I think Peter will vouch on what I'm gonna say. If you have a hole on a blacktop road and a car hits it just right, blows a tire, we own it. Am I right? Right, if it's not repaired. I mean, if.
Can I take everybody's time to give you a quick anecdote? I sit with a group of people who come from all over the state routinely. Several of the meetings, of course, occur during the winter. A number of them here and there. One occurs where weather's a matter of concern. Several people call in, say they can't travel, they can't get there, the ice and blah, blah, blah. I show up, and a couple of times, finally, somebody said, why, how do you get here? Do you come overnight? I said, no, I'm from Shelburne. And they said, oh, you live where Goodrich does the roads. I said, yeah, I know who he is. And
pretty well known.
Thank you, Paul. Any other questions about highway? I think we're going to flag that reduction. We'll come back to it.
Jerry,
Mary?
I have a question about highway. Yes, thank you. I have a question for Paul. If I remember correctly, his request for $375 for retreatment and paving did not include Beach Road.
No.
And I want good clarity on that.
No,
or
good.
anything inside the beach area.
No, he's requesting a $50,000 increase exclusive of any paving down at the beach parking lot.
All right, thank you for the clarification.
Okay? Now, there is a suggestion, I think, on a number of our parts, Lee and Peter, about item 13, and that is to itemize, to split that in two and itemize each as 15. Do you want to explain your
I would like to see us go back to how we budgeted it last year. It's just breaking it out. I'm fine with the overall number at 30, but I would like to see a dedicated line item for traffic safety improvements, and then the balance can be set aside in that sidewalk maintenance.
Okay? Is that okay to do, Peter?
Jim, I have a question. We spent some money on putting line striping down on Falls Road. We have a lot of other town roads that aren't getting the same attention. I'd love to see line striping on all of our roads. And I know Paul hasn't been able to do that because I'm looking at, $10,000 here for sidewalks and striping. We put a second stripe down for no use.
Thanks, Jim.
And I'd just like to see something done on the other roads.
Thanks. Appreciate the input.
You know, we're not doing the double line striping ever again. Well, not on my watch. We learned our lesson on that one.
I thought it was quaint. I thought it was just like a little gravel road that runs under 15,000 maple trees and ends up on the calendar of, I thought, honestly, it called more attention to the safety concerns than if it was absolute, rod straight. It made headlines. It was a subject of conversation. Anybody driving it could see it. It was a reminder to me that might have competed with red flags. I thought it went fine.
Yes.
Anyway, personal opinion. Bruce?
Bruce Nunziata Falls Road. I'd like to talk about the pedestrian safety issue in a totally different way here, and the budget makes it helpful. It does belong under a department with a department and people responsible for pedestrian safety. It's just kind of been floating out there, and we come here and we sit and we beg and we tell you about the police reports and this and that. And I've been doing this for 5 years, you know that. You're sick of hearing it, I'm sick of talking about it. It belongs, like every other function of the town, in a department, and it should be evaluated as far as a need and dealt with, with a responsible department, responsible people. It's now in highway. I think that's sort of an appropriate place, although it made me question the name Highway Department. We have more sidewalks than highways. I don't even know that we have a highway, per se. Other towns are changing the name to Streets and Sidewalks, and as a gesture or an actual factual thing to make the point that they're dealing with more than just making the cars go as fast as they can. So we're spending $1.4 million basically to let the cars go as fast as they can, and then spending $10,000 so they don't kill us. I mean, I think the $30,000 is 2%. 98% of that highway budget is to move the vehicles. 2% is for the safety and the sidewalk stuff. So I think it needs a little more attention. Make somebody accountable. You know, if Paul's job is to make cars go fast, he's great at that. But the rest of us think there's other issues. There's safety. We'd like to see the sidewalks upgraded. I'd like to see the name Highway Department to include or have a subsection sidewalks and pedestrian safety. So it's somebody's responsibility. Somebody needs to check a box. What did we do about this issue? People against it, you know, opinions are fine. I like quantifiable data. We've seen multiple police reports with the electronic tubes that cars are going 45. I see it every day when I see the radar sign, 45, 47, 48 miles an hour. It's the core of the village. It's not some back road. It's the core of our historic village. People on the sidewalk all the time. There's no protection, no curb. So it is a bit unique. But again, you know, I shouldn't have to come here. People sit here for all hours, beg you for money to fix this thing. It belongs under a department like everything else. And somebody should be responsible for doing it or not doing it. You know, you guys are, you know, the executive direction comes from this table. So, thank you.
Thank you, Paul. It's very thoughtful.
Bruce.
I'm anticipating Paul. Thank you, Bruce. Paul.
Well, I guess the mention of sidewalks has been in highway since day one, since they were built. And I guess it's under when they get plowed and when they get sanded. And I know they don't meet your specs. That's okay. But they're taking care of the best where that budget ever says $10,000 or whatever. I have walked these sidewalks with many people. That board up there in the past 50 years either approves that money to do a sidewalk or whatever. That's not me. I only do what I'm told to do. And crosswalks. Everybody and their brother asked me how many more we got to put on Falls Road. Because we got 100 of them down through there. And it's funny when I sit there and watch people cross and never hit the crosswalk. They walk 15 feet one side or the other, but they can't go across the crosswalk. That's pretty hard to take when the guys that are complaining about it do it themselves.
Thank you, Paul.
Let's have comments directed towards the board.
Yep.
I rest my case. This is the point. I shouldn't be arguing with your highway department.
No.
I think safety, for me, if I was involved in this in any way, safety would be important to me. Sure, people speed, people don't use the crosswalk all the time. We do the best we can to make a safe environment. So I'm just really tired of arguing with people. If you don't think it's a danger to walk on a 45-mile-an-hour sidewalk with no curb, you know, why do we put curbs? It's like walking on the interstate. That's opinion. You know, Paul's entitled to opinion. I'm just saying, use data. We know what the speeds are from the police department. We know there's no curb. What's there to protect you?
Thank you, Bruce. Any other comment?
No.
Any other comment about highway?
We're agreed. I mean, I will just say, I think we've made good progress generally in the village. I think there's more work to do, which is why I think we need to allocate more dollars towards it. So I would like to see it broken out, 15-15, if the board is so willing.
Wait, but that's just taking the amount and splitting it.
Yeah.
In a way that makes clear how
sidewalk
it's.
funds should be sidewalk funds, and then traffic safety should be traffic safety, just so they're not commingled, so to speak.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so it's a little more. It's more than a gesture. It's a step in the direction that Bruce is discussing, which is, and each year we've had more of an item, more discussion. I'm not sure, honestly. It's a great idea, and I think you will find most of us agreeable. I'm not sure in the context of budget where you would creating a department, but it's something we can certainly think about and keep thinking about. Thank you, Bruce. Yeah. Anything else on highway? Page 9, Health and Social Services. On page 10, Rescue. We had one question about operational expense. Jake and Peter helped with that. That was at least, I think, addressed satisfactorily.
Yes, it was. Yeah, that was a plug for the radio grant that we didn't get.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
we talked about the medical supply, yeah, I don't know, forget it. Sorry, my bad.
Medical equipment, the stretchers, power.
The stretchers,
Yeah.
right, yeah.
It was just a timing issue.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. So, anything else on, no? Cemeteries, we have a question. No. I think that's a matter of staff compensation, and I think that's probably something that we should be discussing in executive session, as is our habit to do so. It may be we can make an arrangement to circulate, in effect, that discussion between us between now and next Tuesday, rather than waiting. Lee and I can explore that with all of your help.
Peter, yep.
How about we send comments to you?
Yeah.
And you can use those to communicate with.
Yeah, and then come back next Tuesday with a.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I've already provided my comments.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
guys know where I
Okay.
stand.
Mary?
Yep,
Okay, hanging in there?
yep, I am.
Okay.
hear me?
Number 11, page 11. In this case, Parks and Rec. I don't think there's anything to ask Betsy of or Peg or Susan. Okay, library, there was a question, I had a question in the explanation of administrative expense, which is 1139. I wasn't clear on what pre-construction operations were.
I believe in the explanation offered by the director, Kevin Unrath, he was referring to their budget for that line item
Stuff was interrupted or something?
previously.
Yes.
And less money was allocated during the whole transition when we were in the temporary location. He's asking to essentially restore what the library used to provide for professional development for its staff.
All right, so this is a recovery in effect.
That's correct.
Through the period, okay. All right, did anyone else have a
No, that's fine.
question?
I'm fine with that.
I know Ruth is observing, I don't know whether Lisa?
I'll just agree with what Lee said. That's what we were trying to do, restore the continuing education.
Thank you. This is Lisa Merrill, the new chair of the trustees. Thank you. On 12, these are sort of institutional categories, beginning with debt payments, running through benefits, miscellaneous. It's worth making a comment to you that in our case of health insurance increase, which at the start of this process in really just before Thanksgiving, set us on our heels with a 14% increase from Blue Cross Blue Shield we did differently than the school did, let's put it that way. We took the initiative and worked closely with staff to their satisfaction of shifting carriers. And the net result is, Peter, at least about $100,000 saving this year. We went from Blue Cross Blue Shield to MVP. So in questioning the school increase, which was not out of line compared to ours, some of us, I'm sure, if not all of us, could be proud sitting here thinking that we managed that problem and managed it well. And to the extent that Lee and Peter were instrumental in that, they are deserved much commendation.
Is that line 26, the premium?
Yeah, it
How
is
does that flow
budgeted.
through?
Health insurance is not budgeted by department, but we tried to put it in one place, even though it doesn't add up to the total as to how much we do pay. So it's more of a benchmark, which does get confusing, but Because often people will ask, well, how much do you pay in health insurance per year? So that's kind of a footnote. It's not really, it's already in the department expenses already, so.
So what is that 706?
The 706 would be the total premiums in the departments. I have everything added together. If someone said, how much are you spending on health insurance?
one
That would
place
be the
figure,
number. But it's not, it doesn't go to the total of the budget because it's already included in each department. So it's more of a reference point than anything else.
Oh, I see. That is a little confusing.
So that we're not double counting it.
Right.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
It
each
doesn't-
Yeah, and
department has
it's-
benefits.
It could be taken out.
Allocations. that-
Correct.
Right.
It could be taken out completely because it does, it does
It just
look like
helps
it's in
us
two
see the
places.
number.
Right.
In whole.
So none of line 35 flows through the total?
Some of the items in that area, the HRA and flex spending administration, the health insurance reimbursements, we don't, with the HRA program that we've got, we reimburse the first half of the deductible. I don't budget that by department because I don't really want to flag, oh, which department had the highest, health insurance reimbursements. I don't think that's something you would budget by department, so there's a separate line item for that. But the rest of it, and other small items, long-term disability, that is budgeted by department also, and other small items, but for the most part, those are now budgeted by department. So it's kind of a transition from having them in one place to having them budgeted by department.
You almost need an asterisk in the budget to explain that, because if someone looks at this, they're going to be
Right.
very
No,
confused,
I agree.
including me.
Yeah.
I agree.
So,
Yep.
Well, and it may be something we want to talk about. I mean, different towns do it different ways,
Yeah.
as Peter's explained. Some just put it here.
Yeah.
Some divide it by department. In this case, we have a hybrid, and
it's just
it can
confusing
happen
to
either
one
way.
or the
We ought to
other. Right.
decide
Yeah.
how we like it best and which is the most transparent method.
Well, it's troublesome
So it's
because every department has a, it's not variable according to department, it's a variable according to number.
Right.
And, so,
Like we don't allocate electricity cost by
yeah.
office. We pay it for the building.
Yeah, and we'll clarify that in the next version.
Okay.
Thank
so
you.
it'll be clear.
We're not suggesting, by the way, that we would export Lee and you to the school system to help. But maybe we should, but anyway, yeah. All right, and Select Board discretionary expenses, which is 1236, I think there is a decent case for reducing that by 1,500 to 1,500 itself, which in prior years, 1819 and 1718 was adequate.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Yep.
You're
that
talking
something-
line 36?
36, if
Just
that's something we
cutting
can
that-
go back to or agree to right now.
Cutting that to
I think
what?
that's cutting back is
1,500?
fine.
15.
Yeah, that seems
It
fine.
doesn't seem like we spend
Yeah.
that much.
Yeah, I agree.
I held on to it for a little while because I wasn't sure with economic development, until
Yeah.
that was resolved, whether we might want to cut a consultant or invite someone, but it looks as if, I think the 25K is a reliable figure, so we really don't need to provide for that, so. Okay,
In the tree conservation fund, will our discussion from tonight reflect a change there?
It will not, because the $1,000 they're proposing to
We bumped
spend in
it.
cash
yeah.
is
year.
incorporated into their budget
Okay.
proposal, so it
Yeah.
doesn't
Okay.
change their number. I did confirm that before
We
the
can be
meeting.
credited for being a little
Checked on
smart
that.
there because we bumped it up. And so we can say, this time, oh gee, we have that covered. Oh, jeez.
Shell game.
All right, now we need to go back and with some guidance to Lee and revisit some of these potential cuts. In the case of one of the first ones was on page 436, which is the transfer from Bay Park Fund.
Gail has her hand up.
And fire chief as well.
We do come to the open space fund, and I just want to come back to my comment earlier, asking for clarification. My concern in asking for that clarification has to do with the fact that for people who do look at the budget and they see how much the budget has gone up, and then they see a ballot item that asks for an additional amount of money. They may conflate the two and think that the budget is going to be raised even more by that. So I'd want to ask that the language on the ballot item be clear and help people understand that there's only one increase based on the open space fund.
Well, we could just put open space in the budget and not have a separate article, Gail.
But I think it's really important to have that article every year.
I like having the article too.
I think it's a way to clarify that everybody.
So we'll do an annotation that this increase has been calculated in the rate forecast by the Select Board as they've addressed your questions, right?
I think you could just add some kind of parenthetical inclusive of
Yeah, I
open
mean,
space
at
fund,
the
should
number
they
that
be
you've-
approved, something
yeah,
like
at
that
the
in
number
the
that
warning.
you've allocated at 30,000, the amount that people are being asked to pay is only $1.90 on $100,000 of their house value. So I think people need to understand that. Thank you.
Tried to cut a deal at 32.5, but
I'd like that deal. I'd like it better if we had what we were asking for, but I understand.
we're still cutting. Chief?
Jerry Wimet, Chief of the Fire Department. So mine's more or less a point of clarification. So when I do my budget, my capital line included the equipment replacement fund, but I noticed in the fire department budget, it's broken out twice, so there's actually more in there than there should be. I know it sounds like
Now you're going to have to.
I'm taking something here. But
Yeah, so which one is that? Line
so on
20?
the fire department line, so the capital line,
Yeah.
line 20. On line 15, the equipment replacement fund, I budget that amount into my capital. So my capital this year was 155. That included car one at 85, 50 for the equipment replacement fund, and then 20 for some emergency life-saving equipment that we need. So we were willing to cut out the $85,000 car one replacement for one more year, which would leave me with 70 in my capital, but that would be 70 including the 25 that's in the equipment replacement fund. So that line 15 actually is in my capital plan under that 90. And the 90 could actually come down to 70.
Those are good guys. So take out.
So what can we do with 20 then, Chief?
So
He's
the
saying
equipment replacement fund,
delete
if you want to put
59.
that at 50 and then reduce my capital to 20, because I have the 50 in my capital. That's where I put
Sold.
it originally.
Sold.
Wait. So line 15 is going up, you're saying?
Well, line 15 would go to 50, but line 20 would go to 20.
All right, are we done with that,
That understood?
gang?
The 90 would go to 20.
Yes, because all it would be in there instead of replacing car one and the life-saving equipment is just the life-saving equipment at $20,000.
What does that put us in?
So it's going up $5,000. Am I following it right?
No, it's actually going. I'm actually dropping your budget
30.
from 115 down to 70
Yeah, 35.
on the two lines.
We don't need to know more than that.
Okay,
Line 15 is
is that
going
right,
to
Lee?
what?
Because I talked to Lee, and car
got a
one we can
double
push
count
out,
in there.
but I'd like to get the other two things in. I'd like to leave the replacement fund at 50 each year, because all that's going to do is just down the road help us when we buy new equipment. So by dropping that, it doesn't save us anything because we're going to be paying it down the road again anyway. So if I can leave that at 50 and then get to 20 for the, it's life safety equipment. It's some harnesses that we use for interior fire operations where if you have to bail out, you have a harness in your gear that allows you to get out a window if there's no ladder or whatever. So that's critical, that 20,000, and I'd like to leave the 50 in the replacement fund.
There's only
The-
25 in the fund, though.
Yeah, but you're taking 25 more out of the capital lines, going from 90 down to 20. Line 20.
Gotcha.
So all it's in the
So
capital
taking
line.
that down by
Yep.
70?
Yeah, all it's in the capital line is at
Then adding the
$20,000,
25, yeah.
and then the 50 in the capital or in the
Okay.
replacement fund.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
Bless you.
So wait, I mean, that's giving us 75?
It's too late.
I know, this should have started the meeting.
All right, that's a big step
Cameras are
because
still rolling.
personally, I was looking for 75 tonight to push it down below 6.5. So that's a good step. But are there any other questions by department? If not, we're going to revisit the things that we flagged. Okay? We've already done where were we? We were on
I think
page,
you were going back to the Bay Park Fund.
yes, Bay Park. And my suggestion was to reduce 36 by 2.
We're still in expenditures.
We're on,
obviously,
I'm
so-
sorry, page 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's showing as
So-
revenue, but it comes out as an expense, and
Yeah.
Remind me, please, which page?
This
it
is-
this was page
4.
4.
Page 4.
This is the trail maintenance,
Got it.
gator, the whole,
Page 4, line,
Line
36, Mary.
thank you.
So, we talked about, Peter, this is transferred from the mooring fund or something? There's a fund for Bay Park? I can't,
I'm sorry, I'm confusing you.
Right? Line 36.
I think you were proposing earlier to take money out from an expenditure line, not a revenue line.
Oh, that's right.
yeah.
If I understood.
I'm sorry.
We were
That's
gonna-
right, we need to go to expenditure.
Right.
But just
Right, but
to help
this
clarify,
is coming out.
that
But it's the same
transfer,
thing, yeah.
It's the same
yeah,
thing.
mooring fees, surplus from the whole project
Yeah.
go into a Bay Park Reserve Fund.
Yeah.
From time to time, money is pulled out to help maintain or improve Bay
So
Park.
where's the expense for that? Is that buildings and grounds?
That was in buildings and grounds. It was in the bike, so that's page
Trails
6.
maintenance.
Line 32.
We went from 10 to 15, and I'm suggesting we go from 10 to 12.5.
Right. So line 32,
Correct.
page 6.
Yeah.
Page 6, line
Ped,
32.
bike ped
That'd
trails.
be a net, that's gonna be a net zero, right?
It's gonna be level funding, you're saying?
Well, yeah, because if we cut, we could leave it, in which case it's gonna net out. If we cut, if we reduce the revenue transfer, we need to reduce the expenditure, right?
Or
To
if you
stay
keep,
even.
if you keep the revenue transfer, because we do have the funds, you could still cut your
And still cut it.
expenses.
Good
And
idea.
that helps your bottom line.
Good, that would be my proposal, to
So-
do that, Lee, and cut it by 2,000.
And this is not where the Gator funds were thought about coming from?
No, I think it is.
Well, it was
Yes.
all blended, but the gator may or may not happen, but the repair still needs
Okay.
to occur. So I think I hear a suggestion on line 32. We're cutting that from 15 to, what's
I would
your
say-
pleasure there?
I would say 13, maybe, depends on what everybody else wants to do.
We talked about at least 2,000 out of that and 2,000 out of the next line, which was the energy improvements.
That would give us 4.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I know Colleen wanted more out of the energy improvements, but I
Right.
think we lose opportunity for some cost
Yeah,
savings.
to me, it's opportunistic, and I'm not sure we're going to, we know enough, we have to anticipate that there could be. Okay, Mary?
Yeah, I'm on board with that.
Okay,
So we're taking 2,000 out of each of those two line items.
that would be my
Total of
proposal. We all
4,000.
I'm fine
We're
with
all
that.
together on that, Lee.
Okay,
Yeah.
just want to make sure I capture.
8, the next one was 8, let's see, 34. And that's the whole repeater, that's the whole discussion that we had. I understand that we should stay with that, but I do hope there's a consequential effort to take a look at what's in those contract costs.
Absolutely.
So we have some
Yeah.
return on that investment that,
Is
You're-
the 25 based on a quote? Do we have any? I mean,
Where
what's the
are we?
basis for that number? Is it just kind of feels like
I
it
do,
might be
we do not
25?
have specific quotes or cost estimates.
And I would like to see 826 reduced by an amount.
Which one?
826,
Page 8, line 26?
yeah.
Yeah, we agree on that. I'm,
It's a-
I don't
It's
know.
a 25% increase. I just don't understand the events over a year that would substantiate a 25% in 1 year increase. And it's conspicuous, it's not in PD.
Well, and again, I'm not
the-
debating it, I'm just,
Yeah.
their explanation was that they're restoring what their historical proven need has been. Whether we accept that is a different issue, but that's their justification is last year it was cut and it didn't reflect what they believed to be
But it also
reality.
didn't interrupt operations.
Well, I mean, we don't know what the
I mean,
actuals are.
but
we
the
don't really
actuals
know
are
that.
gonna exceed
The
the
actuals will probably be
63.
high on that line, so
Yeah.
So I'm
it's
not-
gonna come from somewhere.
I'm suggesting 5,
You want to trim 5.
from the 16.
Yeah, I mean, that might just be a trimming that makes us feel good, but it could end up that we, you know.
No, we're in a speculative area here anyway. I'm content if everybody's okay with staying where we are.
Again, certainly
Yeah, I mean, I didn't-
up to the board. It's,
Mary?
I know they're trying hard to keep,
I'm sorry. I agree with you, Jerry. It's conspicuous, and I've been over the PowerPoint a lot, and it's a stunning amount of money to pay, and I don't fully understand how they could get by last year on 63 and then need $16,000 more.
We don't know if they did.
We're
I
not-
think that was my point was
Right.
you're not seeing actuals, that's just a budget.
right, we're not going to get
So-
by on
Yeah.
that this year.
I think Lieutenant Thomas said that they are on track this year to be in the $80,000 range again. So I
80.
think it's a kind of question if it was simply under budgeted
Right.
for the 1920 year, if you compare it to the actuals. And we
Yeah,
can,
it looks
You're
like it is.
comfortable with that?
well, I think
with
that's
that
what they're telling
characterization?
us, where they're at year to date. It's going to be close to that 79 number again.
Okay.
So,
So
All
I
right.
think, yeah, I think we'd be a little quixotic. to-
All right. We do have the factor of uncertainty, so I don't want us to push too hard to that wall, because we don't know. I mean,
I know that they are doing a much more thorough job this year than had been done in the past, tracking these literally
Yeah.
weekly and doing their best to keep those down.
well, hopefully.
Can I ask one thing? We skipped over I'm sorry, it's late. That radio expense in the police on line 23, did we decide that that is something that would be erased with the radios? Or they're gonna need that anyway as an
Which
extra?
one?
This was
Well,
the discussion around that 43,
Yeah,
the 14.5 on line 23.
that's another 50-50 bet, Mike, because if the
Well,
town
I
supports.
wasn't sure.
Yeah, if the
were
town
they
supports the
saying
bond,
that if the town supports the bond, this will go away?
they wouldn't be expending that amount of money,
Right. Is that right?
correct?
I think that line item is partly for
Or was that
maintenance
the maintenance
agreements on the radio
contracts?
equipment.
Right.
I think Mike said he could live with level funding the 10-2 and not making it 14-5.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think he
that's-
could agree to that.
That's
but-
what I thought
But
I
there are
heard.
other expenses in there other than the new radios. It's the
Yeah.
support,
Yeah,
the
that's
maintenance
fine.
of support.
Oh, so it's independent of the
Right.
new.
We have contracts today
He
for
said
radios, those will
There's
continue.
existing equipment and there's new equipment.
Oh, I thought
and
they had
maintenance
some
has to
warranty
happen
money
for
in
both,
there.
So
So he can live with level funding.
I believe that's what he
I thought
understood him
that's
to
what I
say.
heard.
Right,
Good for
that's
you,
what I
Mike.
heard as well, that the 4,300 increase was for an additional radio, but that's going to get baked into the
Into the bond.
overall
So the-
bond if
so-
that's
okay,
approved.
so the warranty increases and whatnot would be in the
10-2 would be the maintenance
oh, okay,
contracts.
now I got you, understand.
So we can take
So we
4,300
take
out.
4,300 out, good for you, Mike.
Just earn my keep.
Okay, Mary, okay with that?
Yep.
8-2, all right, we're on to 9. And 9-10, I'm proposing that we reduce 375 to 350.
350?
Yeah.
I wrote 330. I said, like, what is 15 off? Yeah, anyway.
yeah,
I
I'm
had a
okay
little
with that. I wouldn't go below 350.
Yeah.
350, Mary?
I said 360, but
I would prefer to see it at 375, honestly. because I think Paul makes a persuasive argument that if we don't maintain the roads, you know, next year we're looking at 400, right? You know what I mean? So,
Yeah, but
you
at
know,
the
maybe
same
we-
time, we also heard, at least at the last meeting, that sometimes there's opportunity in that budget, right?
What do you mean by that, Jamie? I don't know. what
That
you
there
mean.
may be cushion in that budget at times. That's at least what I heard at the last meeting, so whether that's true or not is, I don't have enough
Well, is
info to
there
know.
money left? Is there money left over from year to year, or does he spend it on something else, like candy bars?
Yes.
Don't know.
Not likely.
He left.
It's,
So we can't ask him directly.
That's a 10-15 question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so.
I feel
I mean-
like in the spirit of collective suffering, some amount could be trimmed.
Yeah, it's a 15%. I think that's again, it's a 15% increase. And, I mean, my feeling is that it could be a 5, a 6, 8% increase. I don't know what the
He
25.
justified it as increase in cost, but I guess I would certainly go along with it. You know, and besides, it sounds like I'm going to get overvoted anyway, so on it. So, you know, I wouldn't go lower than 350. I'd like to see
Yeah, I
it at
agree.
least 360.
Okay,
Okay.
direction to you.
Yes.
The next that I flagged was 1236. I think that's our reduction. I think we've already done that. That's our
Yeah.
reduction in the
We also
discretionary.
had breaking out the traffic safety and sidewalks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is that
I
right?
thought that was decided, right?
Yeah.
I think
We'll
that-
break that out. Doesn't
Yeah.
change our
Yeah, it
bottom
doesn't
line.
change numbers. Yeah.
So if we're looking at, it's especially difficult at this hour to add this up in your head,
No.
but we gotta be looking at something close to 60, right?
So, taking into account
With
that
Jerry's
additional
gift.
1,500, so we are at round numbers $80,000 we've taken out
Fantastic.
tonight,
The point, right?
That's a point, right? Yeah.
which
Fantastic.
is roughly a percent.
Isn't that right? Yeah.
Wow.
So real round numbers, we're at about 80K. We just
It's just
Pull
where
that.
I'd like to see us.
Yeah, me too.
Yep.
So, Peter, remind me, when we look at, I'm on page 1, at the roll-up here. When we look at a budget that looks pretty much flat year over year, you know, 963 to 963,
What page are you on?
I'm on the
On
first
one.
page,
Oh, yeah.
The
okay.
summary.
right?
thank
So the
you.
budget's flat, but the tax rate's going up from 5.2 to 6.79, at least in this draft.
Right.
What's driving that? That's the tax rate change?
The big issue is in the 1920 budget, we had all of that radio equipment for fire and rescue that was going to be grant funded. And that didn't happen, and it was taken out of the 2021 budget. So
So
that
it's a
revenue,
falsely
yeah,
appreciated
those
number.
revenues and expenses that we were getting, or those expenses that we were getting by grant revenues came out of the budget, but they were replaced by other expenses that increased in this year's budget that weren't offset by grant revenues. Because that was a large project. It was several $100,000, I remember.
Yeah, that was roughly
the
a
radio.
$500,000
And with
project.
a 80% grant revenue covering it.
95%.
Or
So this is really
yeah.
a coincidental.
So we took all that out,
Yeah.
so the expenses came out, but we had other
But where
expenses
does
that went
where
in
do
it.
you, I'm not following. When you say the expenses came out, of what?
Well, if you look at the rescue budget and the fire budget, year to year, last year or this
Yeah,
year,
yeah.
and the
I'm seeing that
2021,
pickup. Mhm.
you'll see the total expenses came down. And the grant revenues went away, because there's no grant revenue in this year's budget, whereas there was, or I'm sorry, in the 2021 budget, where there was in the 1920 budget.
So when the bottom line is roughly the same, it's being backfilled by expenses that are not refunded by grant revenues. So that's why the rate
Although
goes
the
up.
revenue looks the same, doesn't it?
It was the same, Jamie, because he's increased the taxes to make up for
Yeah.
the total expenditures that we have to
Right.
date.
That's
Yeah.
the fill.
Right.
That's the backfill.
It's good questions, because it can appear to be
Yeah,
unusual,
it's just
but
the numbers coincidental,
Right.
yeah. Good question.
Well, I don't think the number's coincidental. I think what Peter does, correct me if I'm wrong, Peter, is you add up all the sources of revenue and it comes to X dollars, and you say, well, I need Y dollars in order to operate the town, so I'm going to have to increase the taxes by 0.47 cents for every 100, right?
That's right. I mean,
Right, but the grand list went up this year, a little bit.
Little bit.
Right?
0.5%.
Yeah.
But
not
what's,
much.
what's coincidental is that our expenditure increase happens to coincide with this revenue expense transaction. That's what's coincidental.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we could have had an expenditure increase of 1.8 million, and then you wouldn't have anything like same thing year to year. That's my point, too. Any
And
other?
What is, where do you carry over the surplus from the previous fiscal year? Where does that show? Or deficit, whatever it may be?
That goes to the fund balance.
What line? Point
That's
me
a
to the line.
balance, that's a balance sheet item.
It's not here.
I gotcha. Which fund?
Well, it's the general fund, it's the Fund 100 fund balance. If you take your assets minus your liabilities, that shows up there.
so on
It's like a
page,
net position, a net
So-
town
is that
position.
page 1, line 11, it says applied fund balance, but it's at zero, we're not actually.
No, the
using
fund
it.
balance is, it's not a revenue or expense, it's the difference between your assets and liabilities.
It's an accounting
So
figure.
if you have a good year and your revenues exceed your expenses, then you'll see
So I
fund balance
guess my
goes
question
up.
would be, is this a year to apply as we do with some of the school budgets, where they'll carry over X dollars towards that operating budget? Is there opportunity to look at that and say,
We could, I mean,
have we ever done that?
we've been
I'm just putting
hovering.
it out there as.
Well, by charter, we need to maintain a 5% fund balance, and then anything over that goes towards capital expenses. We can look at it again, but we've been hovering right around the 5%.
Okay.
So we tend to be a little conservative and not draw that out.
Pull it.
That's is that in the charter?
Yes.
It is, right?
Yeah. But we could take a look and see,
I'm
roughly
just
where we
trying
think
to
we'll
think
end up this
creatively,
year.
that's all.
Yeah. No, it's
Yeah.
interesting because it's not like there's a conventional municipal model of taking an amount each year to ensure a certain tax rate.
Right.
An actual transaction.
Right.
And that's not what we do,
Right.
But that's habit for lots of us who we're used to that.
But the school does that. They
Yeah.
roll over their
Yeah.
surplus
They
and
did
apply it
last-
against the
Yeah. Yeah.
subsequent
And
year.
it's
It
not
also
really-
could be
I mean,
corporate,
It's
so.
also not really a cash balance. People think that it's cash in the bank.
It's just a
It's
net
assets
position.
minus
Yeah.
liabilities.
Yeah.
Part of your assets are receivables.
Yeah.
The town has to collect the taxes. We have to turn
Sure,
over
there's-
exactly what the school district
Yeah.
needs, whether we collect it or not.
Yeah,
So
there's
that
AR
presents a
risk, I got
cash
it.
flow issue for
Mhm.
us.
Okay.
Okay, anything else going forward to Tuesday night? Ruth, you got a question?
So.
Don? Ann? Okay. All right, we're headed to Tuesday. Have you got?
So technically,
can
we'd need a motion to continue.
No,
the
I
hearing.
understand that.
Yeah.
And then we have one more pro forma routine approval.
I'm looking right at it. It's number 11.
Thank you.
Okay.
Tuesday will.
I'm trying to get to number
Will just
11
be-
right now, so.
Do we have
All right.
other anticipated items for Tuesday?
Yeah, we
Town
have an
manager's
evaluation, we have we have several.
But are we gonna dial in and vote on the?
Yeah, and
I
reach
think
a-
we have to
approve.
finalize the warning,
Okay.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Well, we probably would have another
Technically,
week if
yeah.
we wanted
We
it,
could,
but
but
if we're
think
ready,
We
let's-
want to be done
Yeah, I
next
think we
Tuesday.
do want to
be
be.
nice to be
I
done.
would like to be done, yes.
Yes.
All right, so
Time
we
to
will
be done.
continue the hearing to the 21st.
So
Okay,
moved.
everybody agreed?
Yes.
Mary?
Yeah.
Okay.
That is agreed.
I heard
In
a
which
second,
case,
right?
we'll then take up number 11 on the agenda, which is to certify, to approve the certification of highway mileage. Lee's provided us with the document. Is there any question?
Which one is this?
Any
Let me just-
discussion?
Oh, I see it. Yeah, yeah.
It's the last.
Yeah, this
the
is an
last one.
annual exercise. The state requires us to certify whether there were
Right.
any changes in our highway mileage. There have not been any, so
Okay.
this
No.
form is
We have to sign this.
Pro forma.
You're gonna get
All-
three of us, yeah,
all three of,
okay?
yes, please.
Is there a motion?
Move to approve the certificate of highway mileage as proposed.
I'll second.
Jamie moves, Mike seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none. Those approving, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you, Mary. And those opposed, nay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Just him?
Jamie
moved.
moves,
Three, please.
I'll second.
Mike seconds. No discussion. Those approving, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Mary, and thank you very much, Mary, for participating as you know, we really
shorts.
appreciate that.